Okay, so before I call the regular council meeting to order, we have a special presentation this evening for the Order of Cochrane. So I'm going to come on up here, share a speech, call council up, as well as the award winner. So, good evening everyone, and thank you very much for joining us. It's very exciting to be here this evening. It is my pleasure to recognize and celebrate an esteemed individual whose impact on our community has been both profound and lasting. This year, the Order of Cochrane Award is going to Dr. Dennis Funditis. Where's my character? No, it's on. Oh, it's not on. I was warned earlier. That turned green. There we go. Apologies. Let me restart. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and it is my pleasure to recognize and celebrate an esteemed individual whose impact on our community has been both profound and lasting. This year, I'm pleased to announce that the Order of Cochrane Award is going to Dr. Dennis Funditis. Dr. Funditis has been a resident of Cochrane for over 45 years and has served as a family physician for 4 decades, from 1978 to 2019. Over that time, he has played an integral role in shaping Cochrane's healthcare system, strengthening our community through his leadership, innovation, and dedication to service. His contributions are extensive. He helped establish Cochrane's ambulance system, advanced urgent care services, and provided leadership within the Calgary Foothills Primary Care Network. Beyond his clinical work, Dr. Funditis has continued to give back to the community in meaningful ways, co-founding the Cochrane EMS Citizen Action Club and the Cochrane Area Health Foundation, supporting initiatives with the Rocky View Foundation and Bethany Care Society to improve senior housing and long-term care, and serving as an active member of the Cochrane Seniors Advisory Committee. So, with all that being said, I'm honored to say thank you to Dr. Funditis for all he has done for our community, and on behalf of all of Council and all of Cochrane, congratulations. And if it's time, I could bring our Council up, as well as our staff, to present the award to Mr. Funditis. Council, you want to come up and join us? Congratulations. Big day. Well deserved. So Council's going to come on up. We'll get you that. Here, you can take this if you'd like. Oh, sure. We present it first, then we'll give that to you. And I'll leave this here for you. You can take that. Okay, excellent. All right, sure. So here you go. You want to look for over here for a picture? Oh, good. Awesome. Congratulations. Okay, great. And then Tara has this for you. Okay, great. And then you can use the podium if you'd like. I think you want to share a few words. Here, I can hold something for you. There we go.
So, Mayor Nagel, councillors, CEO Drew Hyman, and the support staff, members of this the selection committee, and I'm very honored to be the recipient of the Order of Cochrane for 225. My fellow participants are sitting in the gallery. They have all been part of many committees that I have been involved with. Many other recipients of this prestigious award have blazed the path for individuals like myself. I would like to thank all those who felt that I was worthy of this honor. I would also like to thank the individuals that took the initiative, the time to feel me worthy, and put my name forward. When I moved to Cochrane in 1978, the population was about 2,500. Calgary was a short 15-minute commute. At that time, I was the only physician in Cochrane. Now there are fortunately about 40 family physicians in the town of Cochrane. Now we're approaching a population of about 40,000, it might take 15 minutes to get across Cochrane. Cochrane growth continues to bring challenges for our community. I have had and continue to have the opportunity to be part of a broader community of like-minded volunteer individuals who are striving to give back to Cochrane. Each of us in our own way have the goal of supporting council and administration to make our community a better place for all of us to live. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Thank you very much. Now, next, we do have the Volunteer Appreciation Awards on Wednesday, which I believe you'll be in attendance for. And are we not letting Mr. Pandaitis or Dr. Pandaitis run away with some of the stuff? We're keeping some of it. Okay, so Michelle's going to want to keep some of the stuff to be used again on Wednesday. Okay, great. Well, thanks very much. Congratulations again. Thank you for your service. Excellent. We'll keep these two. Congratulations again. We'll just give it a few minutes for the room to clear out. Not sure if they'll be joining us again. Okay. I think that settles it. Now I'm officially calling the regular council meeting to order of April 20th, 2026. We've already gotten through, we are live, right? Okay, we've already gotten through the order of Cochrane presentation. Next up is to adopt the agenda for this evening's council meeting. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda? Councillor Singh?
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Okay, all in favor? Carried unanimously. We have no public hearings, and that does bring us straight, we have nothing on the consent agenda either. That brings us into approval of our previous minutes. Can I get a motion to approve last meeting's minutes? Councillor Gale?
I'll move to approve the April 13th minutes.
Any conversation? All in favor? Carried unanimously. And next up, delegations. Item 6A, delegation from the Southern Alberta Land Trust Society. An invited guest is here to give us a presentation on all their work.
We also have Western Sky Land Trust with us here as well.
Okay, great. Great.
Good evening. I think it's evening, or good afternoon, late afternoon. Thank you sincerely for the opportunity for both Salts and Western Sky to talk to you about communities protecting source water for future generations. My name is Max Fritz. I'm the Executive Director with Western Sky Land Trust with a focus on private land conservation in Southern Alberta. We have had land donated to us as well, and we do operate a park in the town of Diamond Valley, a natural area park. And our focus in the Cochrane region has really been in the Ghost River and Wipers Creek area for working with private landowners for conservation. I'll invite Justin to introduce himself.
Great, thanks Max. Evening everyone, my name is Justin Thompson. I'm the Executive Director of the Southern Alberta Land Trust Society, SALTS. Max and I work quite closely together, but our organizations are complementary. SALTS is an organization that was started by ranchers over 25 years ago. We do have current ranching board members from the Jumping Pound area, Longview, Nanton, Pincher Creek area. So we're a rancher-led land trust. We work predominantly from west of Calgary, out in this area, down along the eastern slopes towards the Montana border. And our sort of focus in this area, back to Western Sky and Salt's work being complementary, Salt's has done more work in the Jumping Pound south of Cochrane.
So today we'd like to spend a few minutes just talking about and sharing what a land trust is, how it operates, and a little bit about conservation easements, because there's always lots of questions about that. And then we'll move into some other some areas. There's 6 regional land trusts in the province of Alberta, all able to do their work under the authority of the Land Stewardship Act. We work in over 20 rural municipalities and collectively have conserved 125 conservation projects for a total of greater than 100,000 acres. We're active and have active support with rural municipalities, such as office space, board participation, and so on and so forth. And I guess one of our strengths is that we've been active as a regional land trust group for over 20 years. So we have strong connections in the community through volunteers, board members, and ranching and farming communities. Key characteristics of a land trust is that we focus on and prioritize areas that have great natural, scenic, historical, agriculture, great working landscapes, and recreational values of the land. This is a picture of the Cumlin family, which is from the Jumping Pound area, and they have a sizable ranch, and they placed more recently with Salt's conservation easement on their land. We work with private landowners that are really thinking about legacy and the future of the lands and how they would like to see them conserved and protected. We have a suite of securement tools that we can offer landowners to help the process of conservation easements, mainly funded by donations and grants. Land trusts can be small, local, regional, such as Salt's and Western Sky, or national, like NCC, the Nature Conservancy of Canada. And the conservation easements are contractual rather than regulatory, but we've been established by regulation. A little bit about conservation easements. They're voluntary agreements between the landowner and the land trust that places restrictions on the property. They're one of the most, instead of going out and acquiring land, conservation easements in partnership with landowners and the land trust are one of the most cost-effective ways to do land conservation in Canada. Restrictions are focused on making sure that there's less fragmentation, that lands are not degraded, and the grasslands or working landscapes are kept for ranching, habitat is protected, and watersheds. Basically, a conservation easement is no break, no drain, no development. Those are the principles behind it. They're also registered on land titles, and they're perpetual. That means that they're forever. It's also important to note that each easement is unique, and we really spend a lot of time with the landowners understanding what they're trying to achieve through their conservation easement and how they like to spend their time on the land as well too. Just one last slide here before I shift it over to Justin. It's not just about land conservation. We prioritize some of the most ecologically sensitive areas in the province that are important not only for working landscapes and ranching and farming, but wildlife habitat and the protection of watersheds. They protect significant areas of wetlands and riverbanks, but they're also places for species at risk for protection, rare plants, fish, birds, and mammals. And in most cases, conservation easements are open to the general public. Obviously, it's privately owned, the land, but they support fishing, hunting, recreation, irrigation. And overall, these landscapes are the water services that they provide for counties and towns and cities is incredible. And Justin's going to talk a little bit about that here right about now. Over to you, Justin.
And a lot of what I'm going to say about water is not anything that's new to you. It's something that I'm sure is on all of your minds. And I think that both Cochrane and Calgary are unique in that the Bow River is sort of part of our identity. It's part of our economic vitality. It's part of our history. It's going to be part of our future. And so the question is how do we make sure that these rivers stay healthy and that all the benefits they bring in terms of clean water, recreation, economic activity stay intact as we see the growth that we've seen. Dr. Funditis talked about how big Cochrane was in the 1970s. Calgary, Cochrane, we're seeing this growth all up and down the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. And what that's doing, of course, is it's starting to impact the ability of the landscape to continue to provide clean water. And so we have had this riches of water for decades. We've been very lucky, but these riches are vulnerable to trends in demographics, development, climate change. We've had abundant water, but we've seen this growth. And so this is creating this urgency to say, okay, we've had this abundance of water riches. How do we plan effectively? How do we work with partners to make sure that these valuable resources continue into the future? And I think probably most of you in this room understand this, but often when we're speaking to people, it's not intuitive. Like I'll talk to people in Calgary and they're like, well, my water comes from the glaciers. I'm like, yes, some of your water comes from the glaciers, but there's a lot of land between the glaciers and the city of Calgary. And a lot of that land provides really important storage, filtration, flood mitigation, drought mitigation, but that's not something that a lot of people really understand. And so what we're trying to communicate more broadly is that if we preserve these natural assets, natural infrastructure, what this is going to do is make sure that over the long term we still have clean water, we still have a supply of water. We know that when you take a healthy grassland forest ecosystem with wetlands, we develop on top of it. We do our best with stormwater maintenance and the design and the planning, but at the end of the day, the water then runs off more quickly and more dirty. It's not the same, even when we do our best around building good human infrastructure, it's not the same as natural infrastructure. And I think another thing that people haven't sort of looked forward to is as our water supply from glaciers dwindles, more and more of that water that comes as rain between the mountains and Cochrane and Calgary is going to be more and more important. So how we store that, how we capture it, how we filter it is going to become more and more important, especially as our population grows. These are not images that are unfamiliar to you, but of course this is the dynamic that we're facing, is this pressure for development and growth. And then quite amazingly, in both the Jumping Pound right near Cochrane and the Ghost not far from Cochrane, we still have these operating ranches and these natural privately owned properties that are continuing to provide watershed services. And so how do we make sure that as we grow, we still maintain these critical properties? And I was
going to add that we wouldn't be a good conservation group if we didn't bring maps, so.
Yeah.
We have maps.
We're going to throw a lot of maps at you right now, and I apologize. We're going to also try and get through this quite quickly so that we've got a few minutes for questions. But the other thing to note is that this area around Cochrane and west of Cochrane is not just important locally, it's important nationally. If you look at the provision of water for the whole prairies in Canada and where it comes from, the eastern slopes of Alberta provides a disproportionate amount of the water for all the prairies. And actually right west of Calgary and around Cochrane is disproportionate even on the eastern slopes in terms of importance for water.
If I can just cut in,
sorry.
You don't need to worry about fitting the questions in your 20 minutes. It's, take your time, you've got the whole time.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
I'll stop. I'll try and go back to my grandma telling me to slow down and talk more slowly when I'm presenting. She was very good at trying to get me to talk more slowly. This is a messy map, and I apologize, but if you can just think that the areas in blue are areas that are natural vegetation, got certain soil characteristics, groundwater vulnerability. These are the areas that if we keep them intact, they're going to provide water services, ecosystem services. And so we've done mapping where we've taken things like superficial geology, vegetation, soil, and said, okay, these are the areas that are still providing those watershed services from Calgary out to essentially public lands and the stony lands. And the challenge we have is that from sort of Calgary out to Highway 22, we know that a lot of that area in Circle A is now owned by developers, and we're seeing a lot of development between Calgary out towards Cochrane and that Area A. And so our ability to actually conserve those areas is limited. From Highway 22 out to public lands, where there's sort of more operating ranches and private lands that are not slated to be in housing development, we think there's still an opportunity to protect some of those blue areas. And in fact, Western Sky and Salts and the Nature Conservancy to some extent have already done conservation easements with landowners around Cochrane focused on these really important blue areas. Back to you, Max.
Thank you. So as Justin just mentioned, the total effort of the 3 land trust organizations working in the foothills watersheds is close to 12,000 acres around Cochrane. If you wanted to try and understand 12,000 acres, that's 4 Nose Hill Parks or 3 Glenbow Ranch provincial parks. The value of these lands, if you were to try and go out and acquire them to do the water services and have those open spaces for ranching and farming, is close to roughly $100 million. That just gives you a sense of order of magnitude of the work that we've done to date. And because of that work, we're just uniquely positioned with landowner relationships to continually work on perpetual voluntary land conservations, and them being one of the most cost-effective tools to do that kind of work. It was really nice to see the progressive or forward-facing effort that the town of Cochrane has with your Envision Cochrane 2025 open spaces and natural areas. The Bow River strategy was a nice long read, and the Natural Environment Protection Task Force is another wonderful opportunity for focus on nature and open spaces and parks. And then you also have the Wetland Displacement Fund. So the reason we brought all that up is that we're here to offer our help, our services. We like the idea of collaboration, and you already have these committees and task force in place. We'd be really interested to learn more about how to work with you and bring some more information about upstream of Cochrane and the things that are going on up in there.
It's
Back to Justin.
back to maps. And it's actually quite, I mean, Max and I work with a number of municipalities. Cochrane is unique, and I would say that it's unique that you're actively looking at these issues around the landscape and environmental protection and the Bow River Valley. I don't think that's common in other municipalities necessarily in Alberta, and Max and I'll talk more about it, but we're trying to also work with the City of Calgary to recognize the importance of landscapes outside of Calgary for these things. And Michelle sort of helped us understand just to the extent that your town is trying to move these pieces forward. And so as Max said, we're here to hopefully be partners with you. And there are other organizations out there that are doing really good work. And there's some very recent data that is going to help us as Land Trust a lot, but I think may also be of interest to you as you look, you know, I think Cochrane's unique in that you've got the town, but of course people that are here so appreciate the landscape that you're in, right? The ranch lands, the river valleys, the open spaces. And so as you're looking at how you work both in the town but in adjacent landscapes to preserve what it is that Cochrane has, there are some good data sets. This is not coming up super well on the screen, but there's just a recent report that was done by a group out of Mount Royal University with both Rocky View County and Foothills County trying to map what is left of ecological corridors in the area in these counties. And so you can see around Cochrane, those areas that are light green, and again, I apologize, this isn't coming up more brightly, are the areas that are effectively still intact and are connected. And so if we want to make sure that animals can still move, that biodiversity can still remain intact on the landscape, it's these remaining green beige areas that we have to make sure stay connected and stay relatively intact. So that's a really, I think, hopefully a helpful data set as you start to think about your planning in the town and directly adjacent. And these are the areas where Max and I are focused on working with landowners well to conserve. The other report that's just come out is we've been working with this organization at Mount Royal University and the City of Calgary to say, if you're going to invest in your source water upstream of Cochrane and Calgary, what are the lands that are most important to keep intact if you want to keep water storage, water filtration, water quality? And so this map is a combination of a whole bunch of data sets, but it's effectively saying the areas that are red and dark red and pink and orange on this map are those areas in the landscape that have wetlands, riparian areas, and areas that are most important for water. So if we can focus our conservation efforts on these areas, they're going to have the biggest benefit long-term for Cochrane and Calgary in terms of long-term water quality and water supply. And then a really messy map, which I'm sorry it's so hideous, is if you take the habitat connectivity for the animals and you overlay it with the areas that are important for water, in a lot of cases, those are the same places. We see a lot of overlap between the riparian corridors, which are important for water, but also important for habitat. Not in all cases, like in some cases, you've got ridge lines that are high that are really important for wildlife, and the valley below is important for water. But again, as Cochrane starts to look at your plan around, you know, engaging sort of regionally in areas that are important to the town, these data sets can help you to say, well, what's important to Cochrane? What do we want to see long-term around our town to preserve those things that matter to people in Cochrane? So again, and so we'd love to work with you, and we can connect you to other people as you do your planning and as you do your work with these kinds of data sets.
Yeah, so just a couple more slides here as we close here. Again, all of that land west of 22 is basically privately owned up to the public lands. And so one of the greatest opportunities is to do conservation easements with private landowners, voluntary. Over the years, we've mentioned that we've conserved up to 12,000 acres year to date. That's been with some pretty heavy lifting by the province and the federal government in their nature solutions and things like that. Well, we're not having as much visibility to those programs and those grant dollars. So we're really looking to create other opportunities working with Calgary and Cochrane who would have the same shared interests in working upstream of the towns and working with landowners. Again, Justin talked about the Mastaki Institute, great resource, and be happy to bring them to the table to help with your planning and forward thinking. And we just really wanted to also, you know this, there's a thoughtful approach needed for development in Cochrane. Communities need services, they need open spaces, and we're just trying to now introduce the idea that natural infrastructure upstream of your town is also something you should be very interested in and planning for.
And maybe I'll just on one more thing I'm gonna be a little more dire than Max is. Land trust and private land conservation have had pretty consistent both provincial and federal funding for about the last decade. We've been able to leverage that together. We've been able to work with foundations and other organizations because doing land conservation in this area, the land prices are very high, right? It's way more expensive than if I'm doing work down at Pitcher Creek or Max is out by Medicine Hat. The province has cut funding for perpetual easements altogether in Alberta. The feds, the recent budget didn't have any money for nature. There is an indication now to the new nature strategy. There may be some dollars, but we are looking for new partnerships. And we're planning to try and work with the city of Calgary closely. There is potential interest in saying, we've seen examples in both Canada and the US where municipalities have said, we're going to invest in things that are important for our municipality. And it may not be a lot of dollars, but we're going to make a strategic investment in our water, in our open spaces. And so this is part of the conversation is how do we work with partners and municipalities? Obviously Calgary it's much bigger than Cochrane. It's got a big stake in the water situation. So we want to see if Calgary will make a direct investment in their source water protection. But it's a challenge right now for us to do this conservation, and there's a bit of a race, right? There's a timeline. How can we conserve this critical stuff while there's still time? So yeah, anyway, great to be here. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here and for taking the energy to put together such a thoughtful presentation. Council, to start the conversation, can we get a motion to accept the presentation? Councillor McFadden?
Yes, thank you very much. I'd like to put the motion on the floor to accept your presentation for information. And following that, I want to thank you for such a great presentation. And I think, Mayor Nagel, this was your idea to invite them to present, that's correct?
Kind of. I couldn't not invite them after I heard their presentation.
Thanks, Mayor.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I guess you could say it's my idea, but it's really, I take no credit, they take all the credit. Yeah.
Perfect. So yeah, I've been aware of land trust for a significant period of time, but it's great to have you here and being able to provide some information to both our council and the people of Cochrane about the value of land trusts. I think you clearly articulated in your presentation about how the people of Cochrane really value the natural infrastructure, as you called it. We enjoy it, for recreation, but certainly value the ranch lands that we're, surrounded by and want to protect that. So having you here to speak to that and answer some questions, I think is very valuable. So thank you first for showing up, and then I do have a couple of questions for you. And so first of all, I just want you to straighten me out if I'm getting my interpretation of how land trusts work wrong. So my understanding of it is if a landowner wants to be a part of a land trust, they can come and work with one of your organizations, and what they can do is then put on title in perpetuity that the land would only be allowed to be used for, ranching or agriculture, or, as you said, you would work with the landowner to determine that, but it would go on title in perpetuity to save that image or value that the initial landowners put on, and so it's protected forever.
Correct. That's called the conservation easement.
Those are the conservation easements?
Yeah, and you can transfer that. It can, the land can sell, but the conservation easement always follows the land title, or it can be passed down to generations. But the easement is always on land titles.
Okay, great. So yeah, so that was my understanding. And so what, is there benefit to the landowner besides the, altruistic value that they want to invest in? Is there tax credits, or how would they benefit for that beyond?
There is, yes. And so we didn't put this in our presentation, but one of the biggest opportunities for landowners is that these conservation easements can be used for estate planning and tax planning. As you know, a lot of these ranches, their cost base is effectively zero, and now they're worth tens of millions of dollars. And while they can roll that over to their kids, if their kids want to continue ranching, if they want to sell that to the neighbor's kid, or they want to give it to a niece or nephew, they're going to face massive capital gains. And so those capital gains taxes up and down the eastern slopes, or throughout ranching country in Alberta, are driving fragmentation of land. Because in order to pay those capital gains taxes, you have to sell part of the ranch. And so the conservation easement does two things. It provides the landowner with a big charitable donation receipt. So we often can do something called a split receipt, where we pay a bit of cash, but most of the value the landowner receives, and in some cases the only value sometimes, is just a big charitable donation receipt. And that's certified federally, so there's no questions from CRA about its validity. And so we're seeing ranchers using these as a way to mitigate the capital gains tax, pass the land on to the next generation. The next generation gets the land at a new cost base, so they kind of start from scratch, and they can keep ranching without that big tax liability hanging over their head. And so that is a big driver for a lot of these ranchers. That being said, if their only motivation is financial, it still doesn't make sense. The people that we work with are highly motivated to either see it stay in agriculture, see it stay in habitat, stay in watersheds, or all the above. And so that is the big piece of what we do. So I often say we do conservation, but we really do real estate. We do appraisals, we negotiate easements, we provide tax and estate advice to accountants. Like a lot of what we do is the accounting, tax, real estate piece with families.
So the Wineglass Ranch is part of Salts,
It is, yes.
right? Okay. Yeah, so I've talked to that family off and on over the years, and I think one of the comments is that, they would never be able to take advantage of all of the tax credits that have come to them, through their agreement with it. So, okay, so I just wanted to make sure that we had that baseline understanding of what a land trust is. And so now, following a little bit in the news, of course, I did see that the province has pulled back their funding, and I wanted to get some clarity on that. So the province has said they're not going to provide funding to organizations like yours for perpetual easements, but they will provide funding if you're looking for like a 30 or 50-year easement, which
Term.
Yeah, term easement, which I think the research I saw, it's just a snapshot in time of the ecological value to just save it for a limited time. I don't know.
Sure.
Do you have any comments to that?
Yeah, sure. Couple things there. The province has something called the Land Stewardship Fund, and the regional land trusts for many years now have been highlighting and pointing that that fund is starting to dwindle. So we only have visibility now for maybe 1 or 2 more years of any type of grant program related to conservation easements. You're absolutely correct. It was focused on perpetual conservation easements. This in 2025. The department felt that they would like to offer term easements versus perpetual easements, and so Western Sky is now working on a few term easements. They're different, but we still look at them as a stepping stone to perpetual. But it's a term, and obviously all the items that Justin talked about, tax benefits and those sorts of things, are not available through a term easement.
It's a straight cash payment.
It's a straight cash payment.
And we've obviously, as a sector, because we were very focused on perpetual easements, the government said we want to do term easements. There's been a lot of discussion about this. Max and I feel that there are cases where a term conservation easement can make sense.
Absolutely.
In my mind, there's other cases where it makes no sense.
Yeah.
We're going to see someone protect land for 25 or 30 years, get paid a bunch of money, speculator will come along, pay them full market value, so they'll make more money, because they acknowledge that easement's off at 15 years later, and the land gets developed. So you've used a bunch of your taxpayer or government money to fund temporary conservation that gets turned over, because 25 years from now, the land values will be even higher, and the motivation to develop that really important ecological land will be even higher, because the pressure will be more. So to me, there's cases and certain landscapes where the nature of the development pressure, a temporary easement makes 0 sense. And so, we look at the landscape in Alberta, and there's some areas where maybe there's a short-term threat of cultivation. There's some grasslands that has really important species at risk, and we think it's going to be converted to canola, because right now, there's this big push to cultivate that land. Yep. Maybe you say, to keep that grassland from being cultivated with that particular species at risk, let's do it like sagebrush. You got an endangered species. Let's protect that for 25 years. Give us a window to work and see if we can find other tools
to move it towards perpetual.
perpetual. In some of the areas we're working out here, I would say that the term easement is just basically pushing off the inevitable. 25 years from now, so.
Yeah, because I think we certainly know in the Cochrane area that there have been 10, 20, 30-year investment land was bought decades ago, knowing that, forecasting that Cochrane and the Calgary area was going to boom one day. And so certainly, I think if you're in the development industry, that you make those type of long-term investments to maybe wait out the easement, as you've outlined. So then my question is, because the perpetual easements, for myself, is really attractive in being able to protect the land, forever. And so you've lost some funding that's going to allow to do that. And so you've been kind of talking about how you'd like to be able to work with municipalities or find other funding so that you can still continue to advocate and provide those resources that allow perpetual easements to happen. What type of funding, are you folks actually looking for? And what are your resources to, what's your current strategy to close that gap, I guess?
Well, I could start by saying that the dot map that Justin showed there, that if we were to look at that in totality over the next 10 to 20 years, there's probably about 30,000 acres out there of high priority landscapes that.
The red water map. I should have made it blue, sorry, but the red water map.
Yeah, the red water map. So there's that. Obviously, we don't have the provincial funds for that. We're still hopeful that there'll be federal dollars that are dedicated to nature that will support perpetual conservation easements. And just because those announcements came out recently, we might not get really great visibility for that for the next 6 months to 8 months. And so discussions like this with your council and discussions with the city of Calgary, who are the beneficiaries of all of that upstream water services. And we're also partnering with Nature Conservancy of Canada as well in those discussions. So we don't have a strategy yet, but we thought we wanted to get out first and start outreach and create some awareness of the situation and where the land trust sector is right now, and keep active with those discussions and see what roads they may lead us down.
And I would say to close the gap, we're focusing in on, where we think there's really strong alignment. So people care about water, we're conserving those upstream source water areas. Where's the link to potential investment? For salts, Max has got stuff he's working on grasslands in particular spots. For salts, we've done a lot of work down on Highway 3, just outside the Crozes Pass.
Yep.
And there's only a few places where animals can still cross the highway, so these critical corridors. And we've got people that are really interested in wildlife corridors. And so we're like, okay, if you want to make sure these corridors exist, there's only a few spots left. We can go and conserve those with the landowners. You should fund them so rather than before where we had broader support from governments where they said, go do species or risk watersheds. Now we're having to really target funders that see the direct connection to the value of what we're doing. And that's why the water piece, we think, is so important. Because it's not just Cochrane and Calgary that see the water piece. The federal government sees the water piece. I'm hoping that this new nature strategy, we can convince the federal government to make investments in natural infrastructure. We can come back to folks like you in Calgary and say, hey, let's partner with the federal government here. Let's leverage these dollars. But most of the money is still going to be the landowner charitable donation. That's the amazing thing about this conservation is that the biggest chunk of value being paid to the landowner costs, no, it's not a cash basis. It's tax revenue being given up through charitable donation, but it's not costing governments actual upfront revenue.
And beyond your ability to function as organizations and to do the research that you do, those are the, I'm sorry, I think I'm just trying to get to, what are the costs that you need to cover as organizations?
Max can speak to this too, but we have sort of different chunks of our business, and one is new conservation, so we're out there working with landowners to conserve new parcels of land. Then we've got tens of thousands of acres of land we already conserve with landowners, and we're now on the hook forever to make sure we're working with those landowners to support stewardship, monitor the properties. If a new owner comes in who doesn't like the easement and says, I'm going to get rid of this, we've got to defend it. And so we have that big stewardship component, and both of us have built endowments that are just specifically for monitoring and defending our existing easements.
Okay.
We do quite a bit of work helping landowners with upstream watering, electric fencing, invasive species management. So we're actually doing on-the-ground stewardship investments. We're out there trying to find dollars to help those landowners. Ranching finally is becoming a little more economic now. It hasn't been for a long time. It's nice that cows are actually making money for the first time in a very long time. But up until now, it's like, I'd love to do a solar water trough off my creek. That's going to cost me $10,000. My calf check is not going to justify that. So we'd be be, okay, we'll find partners to get that solar water trough, that electric fence in the creek, and work with you to do that. So that's another component of our business is stewardship.
Okay.
So yeah, those are the three pieces.
All right, so last question, then I will let my colleagues talk. They do tell me that the reason the meetings go too long is sometimes I ask too many questions.
They're excellent questions, we appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, thanks for that.
It allows us to expand.
So, yeah, so the next one then is, so your funding is coming, like your perpetual funding doesn't exist on the provincial front right now. So you're gonna ask the federal government to lean in and maybe help fill the gap. You're working with individual funders and partners to meet that as well. And now we're trying to reach out to the municipalities that, so I assume it's Calgary, it's Cochrane, it's gonna be Bighorn and Rocky View County. Everybody who benefits from having clean water to draw from. And so then the next piece then, is there a way for individuals to contribute as well? If I go to your website, is there a donate now, give me a tax receipt way?
Yes, for sure. Yes, absolutely. Feel free to come to our website, and it should, hopefully it's clear. If it's not clear how to donate, then let us know if that's a problem.
Call Justin or Max.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Got the put that number up there. Excellent. Well, yes, again, thank you for the great work you do, and it's been absolutely, you know, we're so fortunate in the Cochrane area. We have the Wineglass Ranch, which is protected in perpetuity, the unique solution that allowed Glenbow Ranch Provincial Park to be a neighbor of ours, and some really great opportunities. And so grateful for those landowners that think beyond their needs, their immediate needs, to the future. And any way that we can encourage more people to do that, I think I'd really like to see Cochrane be a part of those discussions. So that's kind of my comments and questions for now, but thank you again for the great work you and all your volunteers do, much appreciated.
Thank you. Great questions.
Before I pass it along to another councillor, could I just remind you, when you're answering questions, please try to use the mic. And the reason for that is so that it's recorded and it's streamed. We can all hear you just fine, but there's people who might be watching or want to come back to this in the future. Thanks. Councillor McDonald.
Thank you. Councillor McFadden touched on a bunch of my notes, so this will be faster. You mentioned you have 12,000 acres conserved around Cochrane to the tune of $100 million estimated value. What's the goal? Did I hear 30,000 come up in the answers just now?
Yeah, Max put that 30,000. So we looked at that map of the most important areas for water, and we said if we could conserve about 75% of those most important areas, that would be 30,000 acres. We estimate that will cost us between $50 and $60 million to do. So it's a big number, but you know, it's going to take 8 to 10 years. Often we have conversations with people that start, and sometimes it takes 2, 3, 5, 6 years by the time we meet with the families and estate planning and all those kinds of things. So it's a long term. We already have landowners that we're talking to right now about doing conservation easements in this area. We just don't have the resources to move ahead. Right. And so, you know, those numbers seem big, but when you look at the value of that landscape, 30,000 acres at an average of, I guess it would be about 10,000, anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000 an acre. It's hundreds of millions of dollars. So the cost for us to conserve those lands ranges from somewhere between 10 to 20% of the fair market value. So you're essentially getting conserved lands, but the money in is about 10 to 20% of the fair market value of the land to get that, because the landowner is doing it through a charitable donation.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the other thing just to add is that it's not only just we're active with certain landowners doing conservation easements, we've been actually doing outreach for 5, 6, 7 years. So it's every year we're back up and down the Ghost River Valley and the Wipers Creek, just keeping conversations open and keeping that discussion. So we're not, that outreach is what actually drives future opportunities for land conservation.
Sorry, I'm just to be clear, we're not here to ask you for $50 to $60 million. That would be a whole combination of foundations and federal government and investment and individuals over a long period of time. But we have done the numbers to look at order of magnitude what we'd like to see done, and that would have all sorts of co-benefits. It would mean that, you know, the fish in the Jumping Pound Creek that spawn there, keep the fish in the bow healthy. It would mean that the water coming to the bow would be clean. It would mean that the open spaces that people see, the wildlife they see would still be here. Like it is really a long-term vision. And so, you know, we're just excited that, frankly, that there's a municipal government that's interested in this. We do have other municipalities that are, but the fact that you have a vision for this and that it's something that you're focused on, even just to have your support and saying, this is important to us. We like the work that these people are doing. When we have conversations with the federal government or the city of Calgary, the fact that Cochrane is interested in this and thinks this is important is beneficial to us and helps us in that story.
That's great. I'm really glad to hear that. I'm on the NEP task force for council, so I'm learning a ton over this last few months. I've heard the word watershed more in these few months than I have in my whole life.
They're big.
Yeah.
They're not just the river, it's the whole.
Yes, yes. And I understand you gentlemen are really playing the long game on something so critical, which is a segue to my second and final question. How do you take something that is such a grand scheme of importance and a conversation that grows with a family and is a generational conversation, and how do you convey the day-to-day impact to Cochranites of something so large scale and long-term? So can you speak to something you just touched on very, very quickly in your presentation about the land being open to recreational use? Because I'm just imagining how you make this important to someone who's not a rancher, cares about water health and water security, but what are the day-to-day impacts for Cochranites?
Right. Yeah. I think we can be quite honest that we've been very focused on land conservation and those relationships with landowners, and now starting to understand better about how to make that message be more meaningful to urban people. And we have a long way to go with that because we've been conservation.
Right.
But the benefits of land conservation is for the entire community. And so our communications and our ability to demonstrate that, we still have some heavy lifting to do to be able to share those stories.
And there is like private land conservation, it varies. The tools that we use and the organizations have different approaches. Like Max has just finished, launching a new urban park effectively in Diamond Valley, right? In Diamond Valley. Land conserved in the town that was owned privately that now is going to be a park. A lot of our properties that are active working ranch land, they're not going to be publicly accessible, right?
Sure.
Because there's issues with access. And so there's going to be a combination of land that is privately protected that is accessible, that isn't accessible. I think it's the hard thing to communicate is that the broader benefits, wildlife, open space, clean water, benefit us whether or not you can actually go walk on that parcel or not. But it is a tough link to make sometimes because people are like, well, you're protecting it, but I can't go walk on it. It's like, well, no, it's an active cattle ranch and you can ask permission to go walk on it, but they might say no right now. And so I think that's a good point. We need to figure out a way to communicate that effectively and understand that there are going to be direct opportunities for recreation, but the bigger opportunity is just that the quality of life that we have because of open space and clean water and wildlife is going to be maintained. But I think there will be opportunities for recreation, direct recreation as well, and direct access.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I'm not devaluing the importance of that whatsoever. Just I could see it getting specific messaging about how it impacts folks' day-to-day lives would, I think, just be really meaningful to your cause.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's good feedback. Thank you.
Good feedback.
Appreciate
I agree.
it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks.
Councillor Predico?
Thanks for the information. When it comes to the granting opportunities, not only are the dollars getting thinner, but is the complexity of the granting opportunities becoming more difficult?
Potentially, yeah. The strings that are attached are the things that are required. We're not, in terms of the federal dollars, we're not sure what the emphasis is going to be. So often there's a certain sort of focus in federal dollars, and it's we want you to focus on this, and that may not exactly fit watersheds around Cochrane. It might be we want you to focus on this species at risk over here, or we want you to, and so that is some of the challenges we have. Is sometimes the funding doesn't align with what we actually think is really important and we want to do. We don't know that yet federally. To Max's point about the province, they shifted towards term or temporary easements. And for some of us, that didn't work for the landscapes we're working in. Some of us, there was places that it might make sense. But again, we were kind of, trying to accommodate what the government was saying they wanted us to do. So it's a good question, and I guess it's yet to be seen with federal dollars. And same with foundations as well. Like the only direct investment we've had from people in the city of Calgary to this watershed was the Calgary Foundation gave us a signature grant, gave SALT a signature grant of $1 million. And we pulled that together with federal dollars, provincial dollars, and we worked with people like the Buckley families, the Cumlins, Eklund's Wineglass Ranch, and it was Calgary Foundation dollars along with federal and provincial dollars that allowed us to do about 8,000 acres in the jumping pound, right along the creek in that area, in that watershed. But again, the foundation had, their own rules and reporting, so we jump through a lot of grant hoops. That's what we do. That's our job, both during applications and reporting. We've become specialists at jumping through grant hoops.
Fair enough, and I appreciate that you said those partnerships are key. If you found something that you were going for, and how Cochrane perhaps could support you, would that be like through a letter of support or something along that council endorses for you to continue to do the work that you do?
Absolutely. We'd love to work, and we'd be happy to come. We'd hope to present to your committee before we came, and it just didn't work out timing-wise, but we'd love to come back and sit down with the committee, and we can dive into more details around some of these data sets and what you're looking at and how we might be able to work with you to communicate to federal government, Calgary. That would be great.
Perfect. I appreciate you presenting and for all the information that you provided.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation and being here tonight, gentlemen. I just had the local question about, I've heard a little bit about, I just heard 8,000 acres, jumping pound area. What other successes have you had around Cochrane for land conservation? What's currently going on around our boundaries in your department?
Yeah, I can speak to, thank you, up in the Ghost Wipers area over the last, I want to say 10 years, when we've been able to work with 4 or 5 landowners to put together, not in one single block, but close to 1,500 acres up in the Ghost area. So up Jameson's Road and up the Ghost there. So that's another example. And we are currently working on an easement on the north side of the 1A up Horse Creek Road currently right now with the landowner up there. So.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
Those are super valuable watershed areas up there for sure.
Yeah.
Anything along the Bow River? I assume there's got to be some successes there.
Downstream for sure. We have conservation projects and properties that have been donated to us downstream of Calgary. Yet to see any activity upstream of Calgary on the Bow.
And Big Hill Creek, nothing yet?
No, the Big Hill Springs or Big Hill Creek Preservation Society has been quite active up there and doing. I know that they have a state of watershed report, and I know that they've been quite active there and even farther upstream, just trying to keep information available to landowners, and I think they've been doing a wonderful job. But to date, nothing up Big Hill Springs. No.
Okay. Well, thanks very much. It's an interesting tool in the toolbox that I didn't know about until our mayor brought forward a few months ago about what you guys do, and it's something that we can introduce landowners to around us and let us know how we can support you.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, that just leaves me. So of course, everything's always done in partnership with landowners. I'm just wondering the order of things transpiring for a successful project or initiative. Is it that your group approaches landowners or landowners approach you or a bit of both? Or is it that a pocket of money is set aside and then landowners compete for it? How does that work?
It's a combination.
It's a combination of both. Yeah, it's that active outreach. As Justin mentioned earlier, sometimes those outreach discussions, it's about trust building with the landowner. And so sometimes those discussions take 3, 4, 5 years. And then the landowner says, yeah, I think this is now my time to pursue conservation. Other times the phone rings and an opportunity is available for us to talk more immediate about conservation. And to answer your question, is there a pot of money that the landowners can actually pursue? Not to my knowledge, no.
No, and unfortunately, all the conservation work we've done in this area, we're competing often with other land trusts in Alberta or nationally for funds. So there's the funds, the Land Trust Grant Program in Alberta, we would compete across all land trusts, including Nature Conservancy, Ducks, ACA. And so it was whoever had effectively the most important ecologically valuable project that would get ranked the highest. And so we'd all put our projects in, same federally, there'd be a limited pool of funds, and land trusts from across Canada would put applications in, and Max and I would be competing with land trusts all across Canada for dollars to say, look, this is really important for habitat and water. And so it's back to Max's point about not just anything gets conserved. We've got landowners that come to us and we're like, we don't think we'll be able to find funds to do your project. We'll try, we'll compete for the dollars, but it's a highly competitive business in terms of the dollars that are available for us. And we'll apply and we'll be unsuccessful sometimes. Grant applications will go in and they'll choose a project somewhere else. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it's very ambitious, and but I feel that protecting the natural beauty around here for conservation as well as for agricultural uses is among one of the most important things that any level of government can do. Because once these lands are developed, you're never undeveloping them. But what makes Canada great and what makes Alberta great is our natural beauty. So mechanically, if the municipal government and our council were to try and do something, from a mechanical, like, logistics standpoint, we would have to find a landowner who's interested, connect them with your group, and then, get them to understand all the details, the potential impacts and benefits to their legacy and their estate, and then start building political support behind it to various levels of government and other non-government organizations that have access to grants. Is that how it would work?
Yeah, that'd be great. And we can do all the work in terms of sitting down with the landowner and helping them understand what it means for their family and what the benefits are. But if, one of the things we could do with your committee is we could sit down with those maps and say, which are the areas that Cochrane's really most interested in, whether it's recreation, whether it's water, whether it's open space, whether it's connections to Cochrane on the bow, like what are those connections? And we could say, look, these are the areas that we think are going to be a priority. Let's see if there's landowners in the area that are interested. I think in the short term, we're going to be working to try and convince the federal government to invest money in what we're doing. We're going to be trying to convince Calgary to invest. So in the short term, just working with you to have you identify that this is important for the long-term prosperity of Cochrane and the region, the work that we're doing, that would help us for sure. And then if we can more actively work with you to facilitate conversations with the landowners and then go find funding, I think we'd be very open to that.
Okay, yeah, the way I could see it unfolding is we have some further conversations in the future with council and our administration, and kind of set like a wish list or dream project, and then start slowly but surely building support behind it. And as I'm sure you've probably already experienced in your work, these things can take 12, 24 months or 12 or 24 years before it actually comes to fruition.
You got to start though.
Yeah.
You got to start. Yeah.
And just to confirm what I heard, you said in your perfect world, $50 to $60 million of support would be enough to conserve up to $30,000 or 38,000 acres of land. Of course, if the landowners were interested in participating. Yeah. Sounds like a lot of money, but if you consider we would spend $50 million on a bridge to drive across a single river, protecting all of the rivers and watersheds around here for that price seems like a pretty good bargain, especially considering that it could have 1,000 years of impact.
Right. Yeah, very long term. So yeah.
Okay.
Appreciate that context. We gotta add that to our presentation. So
yeah. Council, anything else? I shall call the question to accept the information that's been presented.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, really appreciate all the questions too.
And thank you to both your organizations for being here. Sorry, I only mentioned the one.
It's okay. It's all good. Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great evening.
Everybody, good night.
Okay, Council, are we good to keep on going before we take a break? Okay. Next up, item 7A, request for special meeting. CAO Heineman.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is to set a special meeting on next Monday night, so April 27th, with the intent of presenting the audited financial statements and audit finding reports. So we'll do that, and once hopefully you will set that meeting, and then following that we'll do a workshop as previously scheduled. So just trying to get it formally on the agenda, and we'd recommend you proceed with setting up the meeting for next week.
Council, will we get a motion to that effect? Councilor McFadden?
I will move the recommended action and inform my colleagues that regretfully I won't be able to make it. So I think you should all have a special meeting.
Okay. And that'll be taking place right here?
Yes, it will.
Okay, any questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Next up, 2025 year-end surplus transfer. Director Robbie Loden.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present the 2025 year-end surplus transfer report. Tonight, I will walk you through our final operating results for the year ended December 31st, 2025, explain the key drivers behind the surplus, confirm the strong position of the operating contingency reserves, and seek Council's direction for the recommended transfer. Tonight's presentation covers 6 areas. We'll start with a brief executive summary, then move into the summary of tax-supported operations. We'll highlight the key divisional variances, both favorable and unfavorable, followed by the rate-supported utility results. We'll then look at the health of the operating contingency reserves before concluding with the recommended actions for Council's consideration. The net results for 2025 is a net tax-supported operating surplus of $1.36 million, representing 3.36 of the net budgeted expenditures. At the Q3 update in November, we projected a surplus of approximately $1.2 million. So the final results is an improvement of roughly $160,000 on that forecast. This improvement reflects effective expenditure management across most divisions in the final quarter. Administration is recommending that the full surplus be transferred to the Municipal Infrastructure Reserve, consistent with our reserve policy. The Municipal Infrastructure Reserve is used to fund roads, buildings, and public infrastructure. On the utility side, which I'll cover shortly, revenues and expenditures both landed at $28.5 million, resulting in a net zero position as expected under this cost recovery model. The 2025 surplus is based on a comparison between the approved tax-supported operating budget and the actual results for the year. Total net budgeted expenditures were $40.45 million, while actual net expenditures came in at $39.09 million, representing a net surplus of $1.36 million. I'll now walk you through the key divisional variances, both favorable and unfavorable. Starting with the Office of the CAO, we're reporting an unfavorable variance of $0.23 million, primarily attributed to changes in senior leadership during the year. In corporate services, there is an unfavorable variance of $2.2 million. This relates to higher than budgeted interest allocations for both operating and capital reserves. The variance is driven by differences between the budgeted and actual interest rates on investments, as well as fluctuations in average reserve balances and the timing of expenditures throughout the year. It's important to note that this outcome is fully in line with our reserve policy, which requires that interest be allocated based on the actual earnings rather than budget assumptions. Community safety and well-being reported a favorable variance of $2.5 million. The most significant driver is the RCMP contract. While we budget for full complement of officers, billing are based on actual staff levels, and vacancies resulted in approximately $2.1 million in savings. In addition, principal and interest payments on the Horse Creek Sports Park debenture were deferred to the second quarter of 2026, contributing to another $0.3 million. The division also realized some salary and benefit savings due to vacancies within the family and community support service areas. Development and infrastructure recorded a favorable variance of $1.1 million, largely driven by stronger than anticipated revenues from safety code permits, as well as planning and subdivision applications. This reflects continued development in the Cochrane area. Council operating results resulted in a favorable variance of $0.13 million, primarily due to lower expenditures related to staff development, conference, and the Calgary Regional Partnership. Lastly, community partners closed the year with a favorable variance of $0.04 million, attributed to reduced spending on contracted services. Turning to the rate-supported operations, also referred to as our utility services, the overall result in a net zero surplus, with both revenues and expenditures at $28.5 million. This is exactly what we expected, as utility services operate at a cost recovery basis, and any surplus or deficit is carried within the utility reserves rather than flowing through the tax-supported funds. Before presenting the recommended action, I'd like to provide council with an update on the operating contingency reserves, which include both tax stabilization reserve and the general operating reserve. Council's operating reserve policy sets a minimum balance of 5% of the total operating expenditures and a target of 8%. Based on our $69.4 million operating budget for 2025, that equates to a minimum of $3.47 million and a target of $5.55 million. As of December 31st, 2025, the operating contingency reserves totaled approximately $10.8 million, or 15.5% of expenditures, nearly double the policy target. This gauge shows on the slide illustrates this position. Given the strong reserve balance, administration is recommending that the full operating surplus be directed to the Municipal Infrastructure Reserve to support future capital priorities. Administration is recommending option 1, that council direct administration to transfer the net operating surplus of $1.36 million to the Municipal Infrastructure Reserve. This option aligns with council's operating reserve policy 1705-01 and supports long-term financial sustainability through infrastructure funding, specifically Section 4, which indicates that 100% of all annual surplus above the minimum operating reserve balance to be transferred to the facility life-cycling capital reserves, or is otherwise directed by council. I would like to note that the reserve policy references facility capital life-cycling reserve, but as council may recall, those reserves were consolidated into the municipal infrastructure reserve in 2022. So this would be the appropriate destination. Option 2 would be that council receive the report as information and provides further direction to administration. Implications with this option would be that administration will allocate the surplus to the reserve in accordance with council's direction. Thank you, Mayor and Council. This concludes my presentation on the 2025 year-end surplus transfer. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, Council, can I get a motion to start the conversation? Councillor McFadden.
I will move the recommended action. I have a couple of questions for you.
For sure.
And now one of the elements unique to municipal governments is that we are required to have a balanced budget, which means that's why we have a small surplus at the end of every year that we then make the decision about how to allocate this. So I think our operational budget this in 2026 was 103 million. Ballparking?
That sounds
sound about right?
Yes.
Okay. And then this was 1.36 million came back, so it's about 1%. So do we have a target that we would aim for as what would be, like when we're mapping out the budget, of what type of a surplus we might be aiming for?
Through the chair to Councillor McFadden, just to confirm, the operating budget for 2025 was 69 million.
2020, okay, but 2026?
So it'd be based on 2025.
Was 69 million.
It was 69 million, that's correct.
And what was it in was the budget in 2020?
I'd have to confirm, but I believe it was around 103 million.
Okay, yeah, so that's the number I was thinking about. And so then this is the surplus from the 2026 budget, correct?
Correct. Or 2025 surplus.
Okay. So, but that's all good. But the question still is, do we have some sort of a policy target when we're establishing our budget, what type of a surplus we might be aiming for? Do we aim for like 1% or 0.5% or 1.5%? Is there a policy or a financial guidance that we're aiming at?
Right. Through the chair to Councillor McFadden, we currently don't have that in a policy, but something we're building out as we build out our fiscal framework.
Okay, so that'd be something we would see or
Something
can expect to see?
Expect to see down the road, that's correct.
Okay, great. And then now the reason we have such a surplus available to us was a lot of that was coming back from the RCMP and that continual game of if we want 20 officers, we have to order 25 type piece. So anyhow, so kind of knowing that when we're picking the RCMP budget, are we kind of expecting that the surplus would be to that number, or is that we're just kind of I don't want to say the word gamble because I know nothing that we do on the financial side is a gamble, but how much of a kind of a risk-based analysis is it when we're looking at the RCMP budget and we're trying to determine how much we'd actually have to pay for?
Robbie, I can help answer this question if you'd like, just based on some of the discussions that council's recently had through AB Munis. You know, we're working with the RCMP. With Ms. Lowe's return, she's actually leading some of the discussions there, and certainly will be working with them in terms of trying to get the full staff complement within our community, the transparency in terms of where those resources are utilized within the community, so I think there is an opportunity where in future years, we understand what this is saying here with the surplus now, but we're committed to working with the RCMP to ensure that this isn't the regular pattern that you would see.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that. And then, so what's being asked here, which is by policy, is that this funding is going to go to the municipal infrastructure reserve, which I think you flashed the numbers about $10 million right now.
The municipal infrastructure reserve is currently sitting at 3.8 million. If this transfer was to proceed, it would be at a balance at the end of the year of 5.2.
Oh, 5.2?
Correct.
I don't know where I saw that happy number of 10 million.
The 10 million, just for clarity, was for the operating contingency reserve. So that was the tax stabilization and the general operating reserves.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, so the 5.2 going to the municipal infrastructure reserve, what can that be used for, or alternatively, what are the limiting factors and what we could draw from that reserve for?
Yeah, great question. Through the chair to Councillor McFadden, that could be used for roads, any sort of infrastructure within the town.
But not if we are looking to offset some operational costs.
That is correct. It would not be for operational costs.
Okay. And then I guess kind of a broader question, how does transferring this full amount to the surplus improve our long-term infrastructure goals, plans, or how does it offset those risks? We've been having a lot of conversations lately about what our infrastructure needs want list is. So how does adding to it with this 1.3 million help address that problem?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor McFadden, it would help strengthen that balance. It would allow us to invest that balance into earn some investment income to help fund further projects down the road that come forward.
Okay, so we're earning interest off that 5.2?
That's correct.
Okay, and
The only other part I don't mean to always chime in on these, but the infrastructure deficit that we would be facing, again, I think this is a good place to put that money in, earn the interest moving forward.
yeah, I just wanted to underscore the point, so thank you very much for that, Mr. Hyman. And then I imagine the answer is going to be when we develop the fiscal framework, but do we have a target of an actual number of what we would like this reserve to be at?
Through the chair to Councillor McFadden, currently it's just a target of a percentage at 5% as a minimum and 8%. We could look to enhance that through the fiscal framework update.
Right, because the current policy is to build that in each year's budget, as opposed to just saying, here's our target number of, we would like this infrastructure reserve to be sitting at a healthy 20 million or whatever amazing number we could have. So is that getting an actual number going to be one of the deliverables of the fiscal framework as well?
We definitely would work through the fiscal framework with you to determine what council would like that to be, whether it be per percentage or a dollar amount.
Okay. Alrighty. Thank you very much for your great answers to my questions. I know I made you dance around and it's not your usual spot, but you're doing a good job, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Federico.
Thanks for the information. I was just curious on the unfavorable variance of corporate services due to operating capital reserves. Is that because council is, sometimes when requests come forward, we're relying more on the reserve idea than what we should possibly be doing?
Through the chair to Councillor Federico, the reason for that unfavorable variance is actually just that we earned more interest income, so we were able to allocate more to the reserves. So although it may show as unfavorable in the surplus position, it's actually just putting money back into our reserves.
Okay, so the opposite.
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Councillor Singh.
Thanks, Robin. I have two questions. So administration effort in achieving an improved surplus positions are appreciated. Could you share which key factors or decisions contributed most to the positive variance and whether these may be sustained in future years?
Through the chair to Councillor Singh, the main drivers for the favorable variances would be within the community safety and well-being area, and that was mainly related to the RCMP contract, the Horse Creek Sports Park debenture and interest deferral, as well as some savings in the salaries and benefits, and then also additional revenue within the development and infrastructure area from planning and safety code revenues. In terms of sustainability of that, I would say that the RCMP contract, I understand that we're working at bringing on all those members, so I anticipate that surplus in that area would decrease. And then with the Horse Creek Sports Park debenture payment being taken out now, we would see those principal and interest payments start coming in. So I anticipate that coming down as we move into 2026.
Okay, thank you. And the second question, you touched briefly in there, for the development and infrastructure services, I believe, would you comment on the stability of these resources streams? Like, would it be, how can they be influenced on a broader economic or development trends, like, for the positive side trends for the?
Yes, the revenues, through the chair to Councillor Singh, the revenue stream specifically was the safety codes revenue and the planning revenues that we experienced higher revenues in terms of into 2026, it's hard to say. We are going through our 2026 Q1 variance reporting, which you'll be seeing come to council in May. So I'll be able to provide a more current update on that in 2026.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Yeah, no further questions. I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Perfect. Now, do we want to break over the next item, or do we want to keep going?
I can take 5 minutes.
We'll take 6 minutes. 6:50. Are we streaming? I did say 6:50, but perhaps we can make an exception since everybody is sitting again. Director Knox, please take it away.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So thank you for having us here tonight to provide an update on the affordable housing assessment that we've been looking at, the former RCMP detachment. As you know, we've been exploring this opportunity from several aspects, both from an environmental, but from a business operational perspective. And in our previous meeting, Council had authorized administration to complete a legal review of the various contracts associated with this. So we're here today to chat a little bit about that. So really, purpose, share with Council the key findings of that due diligence, and then provide you with administration's recommendation for a path forward. So the major key finding from our due diligence from the legal team was there was a significant issue that came forward from the proposed transaction. So initially, how this was discussed with us is that we would see this just as a discounted land transfer, with a consequence that if we didn't meet the social outcomes or needs, that we would have to pay back the full value of the land. What came out of the legal review is that the town actually has to carry the full value of that forgivable loan over the agreement of the term. So a little bit of a difference from what we were expecting. And this was something that, based off of the various needs of the community, it creates a material financial exposure and really would reduce our available borrowing capacity for other projects that the town's looking for. And that's something that I think was really significant to us. We went back to the landowner to discuss this, if there was any way we could change it, and really go back to what we had originally talked about, that discounted land transfer with a penalty if we didn't meet those needs. What came out of that is the landowner actually provided us with an alternate suggestion that they would be able to possibly pursue a direct sale to a third-party affordable housing proponent, so actually taking us out of the mix. This wasn't something that was on the table previously. And this is something that actually, from what we've assessed, might be, and what we're recommending is this would be the best model for us to move forward. So our recommendation is actually to discontinue pursuing a town-led acquisition under the current model due to that material financial risk, but to continue to support the landowner with this third-party a direct sale affordable housing proponent they look at. And what I mean by that with us supporting is we've done a lot of work and a lot of research into what's there in terms of the environmental factors. So being able to provide that to whoever would be pursuing this, as well as kind of that technical and contextual. So, how many numbers of parking spots do they need, and the various concerns that have been raised by the community. We did meet with the residents from the East End community March 31st, a memo we provided to council, but we would also provide this to any of the proponents who might be interested in engaging in this project. So they would have that full contextual information. So really, this is our opportunity to step back from, I would say, maybe the leading financial risk, but supporting this option still as something inside of our community. To be clear, this recommendation from administration is really mostly about reconsidering the transaction structure that places an unnecessary financial risk on our taxpayers. We want to ensure that any of our investments in this space are the best fit for Cochrane, but it doesn't mean that this project necessarily is ending. So if the landowner does pursue this, we're still going to reach out to the various proponents that may be interested in something like this, share the various information that we have, and they can negotiate with the landowner directly. So that is our big focus. This is our recommendation. Council receive this report for information, and that we discontinue a town-led acquisition. So.
All right, thanks for your presentation. Council, can I get a motion to start conversation? And you do not necessarily have to vote in favor of your motion if you're undecided on where you stand. Councillor Singh?
I saw your light. That's all.
Okay, I'll make a motion.
Which one?
That the council received the report for information, and further that the council direct administration to discontinue further work towards a town-led acquisition of 359 First Street East under the current proposed transaction structure.
Do you have a comment?
Yes, I have a few questions, please. Thanks, Matt. And there, how can the lesson learned from this process help inform and strengthen the town broader affordable housing strategy and targets moving forward? And I have a follow-up as well.
Yes. So through the mayor to Councillor Singh, you know, as we said, as we went through this whole process, ton of learning in terms of what are those various conditions we need. And I think, you know, really from the questions that we heard from council and the community, what are those larger concerns that we're seeing? So, you know, ensuring that we're looking at the right location, we've got the right amenities, parking seemed to be a big thing, and I totally understand that as well. So ensuring that we are able to bring that forward into our future projects. The one thing that I'm actually most proud of, and was a lot of the work that, you know, our housing strategist, Gina Vandenberg, had led around really understanding what types of grants are out there and the conditions that we need to have to receive them. So usually when we're looking at affordable housing on a larger scale, municipalities have to invest in the enabling conditions. So all of the grants that we've found or that are available, very few of them will actually pay for land or for the planning process. So if we're thinking about advancing our affordable housing initiatives and strategies, that's where our investment is most valuable. Not necessarily as an operator, not necessarily as a builder or developer. It's ensuring that we have land and a plan associated with it. That's when grants and those things really open the door. We've also made some really great key contacts across the way. And the other thing I think that, you know, has been really valuable, and I mentioned this in the report, and I should have it up here too, is just thanking everyone in the community for reaching out to us. I think this really started the conversation in our community about what it would take and how necessary it is and what we need as well. So even just getting that sense has been fantastic to be a part of both our housing needs assessment and our strategy moving forward.
Follow up, like beyond the information sharing, what specific tools or supports, like expedited approvals, fee reduction, partnership, could the town offer to strengthen the likelihood of a successful affordable housing outcome?
So quick question, for this site specifically?
Yeah, in general, yeah.
Yep. So for this site specifically, a lot of it would be the various information, you know, ensuring that we can help whoever the successful proponent or who might be interested, knowing the various regulations. So again, working with them to understand, we already dug into the rail guidelines, what they would need to ensure that they would be proposing on that site to meet those types of needs and things like that. There are options and some tools inside of the planning world. Not something the town has previously used, but something we'd like to explore as a part of a larger strategy as well.
Sure. Thank you.
Councillor Verdico?
Yes, thank you. I have a couple questions for you. So if the federal government takes us on and then they find their own proponent, I understand that they have to follow our bylaws and land use and stuff like that. However, if they found a proponent that wanted to build a 6-story building versus what we were considering as a 4-story building, I guess we really have no necessarily say in what that end product could look like. Is that what I'm understanding?
So through the mayor to Councillor Verdico, so if it meets our bylaws, yes. So that is the one downside of this pursuit, is that if the proponent was there, they would just have to follow whatever our bylaw is. I think for community, it's 5 stories max is our current structure. But yes, they could do that. And that was a concern of the community. The part that I think becomes most relevant here, though, is if they were to go to 5 stories, parking becomes a larger issue in terms of our bylaws there. So that was something that we were also, feedback we were going to be giving to the federal government around, if you remember, there was a proposal around number of units. We'd be able to share with them, well, actually, based off of our parking regulations, this is the kind of the maximum number of units. Our assessment is, so it'd be better if you could bring that down a bit, and that might remove that concern as well. But yes, that could be something that could occur.
Okay, I mean, I think it's just important that the public understand that
Yep.
if we're not pursuing this, like really, we're kind of leaving it up to the hands as long as they're meeting whatever the base regulation is that they have to meet, that this could turn into something completely different. From a timeline perspective, I know that this project was considered to be a fairly tight timeline to begin with. Will that stay the same if we're removed out of that process altogether? So if we didn't see them find a proponent rather quickly themselves, then does it go back out to just being third-party sold altogether, and who knows what goes there?
Through the mayor to Councillor Padeco again. So that is our understanding is that yes, this would be following a similar timeline, and that if they weren't able to find a successful proponent, it would be up to the federal government. There's a lot of, I think, maze that could happen, but that is what they had signaled to us as well, that if we weren't going to move forward, that it would typically go through their standard disposal process, which would be, again, anyone could purchase that site and build something that would follow our zoning bylaws.
Okay, I don't have any total decision right now, but I'll listen to what my colleagues have to say. I think it's, I understand the financial risk, but I also understand the risk of being on the other side, that once you step out of it, this can become a different project altogether. Even, you know, when we went out to the community, said this is kind of what our design build looks like. This is who we might be looking at to kind of build these units. So that could all be taken off the table here, and then we are really up to, like I said, as long as they're following the base minimum, we really have no control over it.
I believe our CAO wants to provide comment.
I just wanted to make a comment through the chair to Councillor Padeco. I appreciate you asking sort of the different paths that this could go, and if it does go to the land disposal process. The current zoning doesn't provide a huge range of opportunities, so I think council can have the confidence that a future proponent on that site, if it were just disposed, would have to come back and do a land use amendment, where then council has an opportunity to review that, and the community can also participate in that.
Councillor McDonald?
I appreciate that. I think, though, I share the same concerns as Councillor Padeco, not about if the land just goes to market from the landowner, but if they do pursue an affordable housing project, am I right in assuming that a different level of government won't engage with the residents in that community to the level that we were?
Yes. So through the mayor to Councillor McDonald, there would not be a requirement for them to have the same level of engagement that we had. Although I think that is something that we as administration could support with. I think, you know, what we've been very honest with the landowner, and you know, we don't have this formally here, but I think if we're going to continue to support affordable housing, we are going to be reaching out to various proponents that, you know, we were going to look at if we were the town purchasing this land and working with them, and connect them directly there. I think in my experience and from chatting with our various community collaborators, generally folks who are building affordable housing do have that mindset of working with the community. There might not be the same level of, you know, I would say oversight that we would have if we were leading that process. But it doesn't mean that we're not going to be engaging with the community or working with that proponent, or at least strongly encouraging them to ensure that there's a proper, I would say, like acceptance or approval of it. But no, there would be no formal requirement for them to do so.
How confident are you that an affordable housing project will continue?
On this site?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very interesting question. Because, and I, you know, being very transparent and honest, the largest issue around this project is the upfront capital that is needed. But with some of the things we've seen coming through the federal government, such as Build Canada Homes, they have been giving a lot of that significant capital to different groups. I think our upcoming housing needs assessment is really going to help us stand out from a granting perspective of what the need is in our community. Do I think that there's like a certain for sure it's going to happen? No. And I, to be honest, I think that would be the same if we were leading it. Whether it's the feds or us, there is that major question, and when I brought the financials last time about where that capital stacking will come from. If the runway of this project was a lot longer, I would be very confident. But the fact that there's a limited time, I think that could be problematic. The federal government might not be able to find a partner who has that kind of capital. But there could be a public-private partnership that goes on where there's a developer who wants to build and an operator in town who might be able to take over. But I can't say with any certainty. I do know that we're still committed to advancing affordable housing through various avenues. So whether it's this project or, I hope several in the future, we'll be working on it. But no certainty.
I didn't know we had any further projects on our radar. Am I wrong about that?
We don't as of today, but there'll be workshops and proposals, and don't you worry, we'll.
I'm pretty worried.
Truly for us, and again, getting a bit ahead of myself, but the groundwork that Gina's been laying with our What We Heard report and our housing needs assessment is really going to be that next, I would say, clarity for us in terms of here's the need of our community, and then we'll work with council to say, here are the 10 major levers we can pull that move affordable housing. What do we want to do? And I think some of those are, a financial investment, and some of those are policies and bylaws. So it really depends on, I would say, where that falls in our priority lists.
Yeah.
But no, nothing as of today.
Sure.
But we're keen to get that.
I'm excited to hear about all those different levers for sure. Because I think we said last time we talked about this isn't solved by one initiative. I just wanted you to describe further the mechanics of how the terms of this whole thing changed. So we would be carrying the debt. Would we be servicing the debt? And for how long?
So the way that it's set up, and this is an interesting piece, is so you have the full cost, full value of the land as your forgivable loan. And at the end, once you've met those social needs of 25 years of whatever you say you're going to do, it's then forgiven.
25 years?
Yes. So our understanding from the Levy review is that you would be carrying that for 25 years. That is the material issue that administration is saying. This would really handcuff us to this project for that extended period of time, where you would receive the initial upfront what you have to pay is very limited based off the discounted, which is that upfront bonus. But if your borrowing capacity is problematic, which we've got a lot that the town is going to need to consider, that's where it doesn't work for us. And that's where we went back after the Levy review and said, hey, can we change this? Can we turn this into a penalty, that it's a liability versus a loan? And this is where the conversation kind of came more to this third option, which again, I just want to highlight to council that if this option had been on the table at the start, this is probably what we would have recommended.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Are you seeing this elsewhere? Because what a pleasant surprise that they perhaps want to take this on themselves. Is this happening across Canada?
From my understanding, typical process isn't necessarily they would work directly with the municipality first. It could be that they do this open bidding process. Municipal partners are part of that bidding process, but with some of the time constraints was where they were looking to work directly with us. Alberta is in a unique space, I think, with some of the new bills that are being introduced by the provincial government that are creating another layer of bureaucracy. And, you know, and not that there's necessarily anything wrong with that, it just slows things down. And so I think this is also probably an assessment on their part of what might make this project as successful as possible is more of that going direct to a nonprofit partner. I think there's a lot less risk for the government if it is a municipal partner in terms of the institutional transfer, but I think that's part of it. But no, there are very few initiatives currently in the province around this at the moment anyways.
Okay. I was just curious how often, or if this is something that is a new push from the federal government to step in.
So typically they would do the open bid, any third party. That's where they would start. And that's where, if we had had that option, we would have started there initially.
Right.
That's the more typical standard. So I think it's more that we're going back versus them stepping in and changing.
Okay. Very interesting. I also don't know yet how I feel, but thank you for answering all those questions.
No worries, thank you.
Councillor Gill.
Thank you for the update. Lots to consider. Just to piggyback on Councillor Fadeko's comments earlier, I know this has a really tight turnaround timeline. So can you please remind me roughly what that timeline is like and how long, I guess, how long is left on the clock for them to find a partner, roughly?
Yes, so the initial timeline that was roughly suggested to us was hoping to have a land transfer completed by the end of fiscal year, so 2020, March 31st, 2027. Again, these things could change, but that was kind of the timeline that we were looking at as well ourselves. But it might depend if we choose to not pursue this and the landowner chooses to move to a direct third party, they'll have more of like a public RFP that would have those timelines.
Okay.
But nothing certain. That's just kind of an estimation based off of what we've been working with.
Okay, thank you.
So I would add, I'm feeling a little bit relieved that there's an option being presented here for the municipal government to step back and let the federal government lead on it. I was a little concerned when we were assessing the option previously. Of course, there was the financial risk of us paying for the demolition, but I was a little worried, and I at least wasn't adequately given all the answers that I needed to understand that if we moved forwards with demolition and then the grants and a partner didn't show up, was the town of Cochrane then going to be on the hook for this project? And I was not sure where that was going to land. And this removes any sort of risk like that from the municipal government. And then I'm hearing also from my colleagues that the risk would be that the federal government may not be able to find a partner and grant dollars. But then I would suggest if there's no partner out there with the capital for this project, then we would be dodging a bullet that we have not taken the steps of taking control of the land and then demoing it. Because if the dollars are out there and the partner's out there, I am confident the federal government's going to find it. But it now becomes the federal government's liability instead of the town of Cochrane's liability. And I know that affordable housing is a need in our community, one that many members of our council are passionate about, as well as many community members who council represents. That being said, though, I did also note that this project was receiving some mixed reviews in the public, and it wasn't a clear slam dunk in terms of support from the community. So we were being presented with a tough decision financially and in terms of community feedback. And so I'm actually relieved to see this option to step back a bit, let the federal government lead on it. And then if it doesn't move forward as an affordable housing project, we don't totally lose control because there's still our land use bylaw that any proposal would be subject to. So I'll be supporting the motion, but looking forward to hearing any further comments from council. And if people need more time, I would say, because I'm hearing some uncertainty around the bench, when do we need to make a decision on this by? Does it have to be decided this evening?
The mayor, the landowner has asked us to bring that forward as soon as possible, just so it's not limiting their time to get this out. But there was no defined date. It's kind of one of those things where like, hey, can you get us an answer in an hour? And it's, no, we have to go to council and discuss this. So, you know, I would say that, you know, that's definitely something we could come back with. I would be hesitant to wait another 2 weeks though. If we were coming back next week, maybe a different conversation. I don't know if there's any way to do a resolution outside of this realm, but yeah, something that their preference, you know, when we had the conversation was like, hey, can you get everyone on the call today? And it's, no, this is a council decision. We'll have to go to council.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, just for context, Mr. Knox brought this to myself, and we chatted about it at ELT last week and really made it very clear that this would have to come to council for council's direction. But there was some urgency from the federal government in terms of their desire to move forward with the decision. So I think certainly I appreciate if council wishes to have more time, but I think the federal government is looking for an answer.
Okay, Councillor McFadden, then Singh, and I'm thinking probably McDonald, but Light's not on yet. Councillor McFadden?
Yeah, I support the recommended action. I mean, affordable housing is a really important concern both at the federal level and here at home in Cochrane. So I was quite excited to see an opportunity where, you know, collaboration could help bring a solution to reality faster than a lot of these projects usually roll. So I was excited about that, but it does look like the federal government has just got a design flaw in what they're trying to roll out here, because if they're trying to get a partnership like this, municipalities are just not going to be able to onboard that much of a debt load in a collaborative favor. So I think it's just a design flaw in where they're at right now. I am heartened that they're still looking for other, you know, solutions to advance affordable housing in Cochrane. So, you know, that makes me excited there, because we do need a solution. But yeah, big picture, it just looks like it's a system flaw that'll put a barrier to any real municipal participation. And I'm sure they're going to learn from it. On the other side, if we were going to continue it, that would be saying that we were going to, you know, buy the land, take on the liability, and do the demolition and such. So I don't think there's a good way in this decision to maybe address the concerns that I'm hearing about potential what could be on the site and the future of the site. My comfort lies in the fact that whatever is built on that site is going to have to follow our land use bylaw. And as was highlighted by Mr. Hyman and the team, that just the site structure, that it's not going to be able to go too high because there are going to be the parking requirements, and you just run into the financial challenges that make that a real barrier to go up. So I'm disappointed that we're not going to be able to advance affordable housing in a speedier time frame, just due to a design flaw. Heartened that the federal government looks like they really want to continue with it. And so with that being said, I see no other option but to receive the report for information and direct administration to just continue the work. And congratulations to the team, to the great work you did put in, and all the key learnings we have going ahead.
Thank you. Councillor Singh?
Sure. But how can these insights, what we learned today, be applied to other potential sites or partnerships where different forms of collaboration could help advance affordable housing outcomes?
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Singh. So as you know, as we've dug into these processes, and even just learning more about, you know, the affordability around like a mixed model and what kind of the capital stacking looks like, you know, big massive insight too, I think, for us around some of the constraints we have in our town. And I think that's actually been one of the biggest key learnings is what it's going to look like for us to find appropriate projects, appropriate sites, and dig into those things. You know, from the perspective of the key contacts that we've made in the federal government to, you know, the few people, one in particular that we're working with, it's like, her whole job is setting up affordable housing in rural communities across Canada. And so in terms of her insights and what she's able to support us with, like, you know, we briefly had a lunch with her and I was like, oh my God, like, can we hire you for a little bit? But no. But just her insights into things that, like, what have been the showstoppers, what have really moved projects forward. And when you look into the various models of, you know, whether it's, you know, a lease-led, similar leasehold like we have with CSHO or various spaces, this will continue to inform our work in the future too. Yeah, so, yeah, I'm not sure if that's...
No. So I'm understanding, this is not the end?
No. No, and it's not even the end of necessarily an affordable housing project on this site. I think that's the important piece too, is it's just us stepping away from the financial risk associated with it, which, yeah, maybe that is the big key insight learning for us is, you know, ensuring that that is front and center for any project that we're exploring. What that looks like for our community to really measure the type of investment we're going to make. And I think that's important too, is like, we shouldn't necessarily be thinking in investments that are 3 units, 4 units. We need to be going after 50 units, and we need to be going after, and, you know, I think this is, Councillor McDonald, it's yes, we need multiple projects, not just one in the hopper, that might get us slowed down, depending on a partnership or things like that. So, yeah, lots there.
Yeah.
Councillor Gill.
So just some of my thoughts. I'm going to be voting in favor of this recommendation. I was a little bit worried, or am still a little bit worried about the possibility of cutting the community out of future conversations if we do get a future partner. So I would really like to see the town, where possible, really emphasize that we need the community to be involved in future conversations. I do take comfort also in knowing the land use bylaws in place do kind of provide some structure to what can go there. So for those reasons, I'm happy to hand over the potential financial risk to the other parties involved.
Thank you.
That's all.
Council, any further comment? Councillor McDonald?
I'm really glad, even though I think this is probably getting squashed tonight, I'm really glad that this opportunity was in front of us. We've had hours and hours of conversation about this project at this point, which helped. I could be wrong, but more experienced councillors, this is probably the most you've talked about an actual affordable housing project in recent years, I'm assuming. So I think this helped flesh out people's opinions and value sets on this. And then I also think, to the mayor's point, this was a challenging topic for our community, and I'm glad. And I want to see more of it because it's not going anywhere. So I welcome all of the opinions that came out, and I welcome the kind of hotbed of discussion around affordable housing. And then finally, I think the urgency I'm hearing that we should make a decision makes me optimistic that they're not just gonna sell the land to something that wouldn't create social impact. So fingers crossed, I guess. Okay, that's it.
CEO Hyman, did you have anything else to see your light on? Nope.
Sorry, no, I'm good. Thank you. Sorry, I think I left it on.
No problem. Okay, all right. I will call the question. All in favor of the recommended action? That is carried unanimously. Okay, thank you. Next up, Cochrane to Calgary commuter transit. Mr. Knox, is that you again?
Half me.
Okay.
No, so I'm actually here to introduce our...
Sorry, apologies. Councillor Wilson, I believe, wants to buzz in.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I'm just going to take the moment to recuse myself, consistent with every time we talk about this subject, I'll be in the back room.
Okay.
Thank you. Tonight, we're here to bring forward a planned service change and update to council and our community around the Cochrane to Calgary on-it transit service. I'm going to introduce our transit program lead, who I think this is the first time before council, so an opportunity for all of you to meet the man behind our fixed and hybrid routes. Really looking forward to our future update about our fixed and hybrid route system that'll be coming in May. But tonight, due to this being an emerging issue, we wanted to have this come to council as quickly as possible. So Adam, I'll let you take it away and I'll be here for questions.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me here tonight. So as Matt introduced, we're going to be talking about planned service changes to the on-it commuter transit service. So just to bring everyone up to speed on what that service is today under the existing state, it is a privately operated transit service. It is operated by Southland. The town of Cochrane and our transit department has really no role in the planning and daily operation of the service. It's a truly private service. It operates 2 primary weekday routes, both of which start and end at the station. So we have the downtown commuter route, which starts at the station and goes and serves 6 stops in downtown Calgary and returns back to the station. So that is its loop. And then there's also a loop done by what's called the Brentwood commuter route. Starts at the station, serves the Brentwood LRT station and the University of Calgary, and then returns back to the station, and that's that loop. Both of these routes complete 2 loops per day, an AM loop and a PM loop. With respect to ridership, to give you an order of magnitude of what numbers we're talking about, the downtown route services approximately 30 riders in the peak direction, so approximately 30 riders in the morning leaving Cochrane to go to Calgary, and then in the afternoon it's roughly that same number returning, and then similarly the Brentwood route, 10 in the morning, and then in the afternoon 10 returning back to Cochrane. So essentially, Southland's coach buses, so they own 2 coach buses to provide this service. They are reaching the end of their service life this summer. This has triggered Southland to do a review of the feasibility of continuing this service. Essentially, is it profitable and is it worthwhile for them to spend the money needed to purchase new coach buses to continue this service? Due to the low profitability of the commuter service, Southland has decided they will not be purchasing new coach buses and therefore will be terminating the commuter service altogether. The plan is to end the service as of June 1st, 2026. Southland has been working with the town and our transit department to find ways to provide as much information as possible to existing customers to give them as much advance warning of this cancellation so that they can make alternative arrangements. And based on the approximate daily ridership numbers I just given you, we're looking at approximately 50 daily riders on your typical weekdays being impacted. Also, just to give you an update, last week, Southland also made it public that they would be discontinuing the summer commuter route that runs from Calgary to Canmore, Banff, and Lake Louise. So that is not going to be provided this summer, and there are no plans to continue it any years after. Essentially, it's for the same reasons that we see here. The Bow Valley Transit Commission, who operates the Rome Transit Service, which is the local transit service to those areas, has publicly said they have no intention on taking that service on themselves. Their priority is their local transit, that being the Rome Transit within their communities. Also, a couple hours ago today, Southland also made it public that they would be discontinuing the Okotoks commuter service as well. It's for the same reasons as here. The town has informed me they have no intention on intervening or providing some additional service to fill the gap. So could the town's Colt buses provide any type of support to help bridge the gap, so to speak? Just a little infographic on the right side of the image there of the buses that we currently do own. So we own 8 Colt buses. These are short cutaway buses that have a maximum seated capacity of 21 persons. On a typical weekday, we dedicate 3 buses to the fixed route service, 2 buses to the on request service, and we have 3 buses typically on spare that are rotated through. So we have an equal utilization of mileage. So we are rotating buses, but essentially we have 3 buses on spare that we rely on when other buses go into multi-day service, for example. We run into some issues when we look at evaluating the potential for us to kind of provide that support from a fleet standpoint. Firstly is the capacity issue. As I said, the downtown route typically generates a demand of over 30 passengers, sometimes up to 40 during some peak days. The cold buses are 21 person seated capacity. So with our limited spares and the need for 2 buses for one route and 1 bus for the other route, it doesn't work for those. Essentially, we need those spares for our local transit system. There's also been a discomfort issue in the past, actually. So it's my understanding and talking to Southland and as well as Rideco, which is the company that handles the booking and scheduling for trips on the on-request service, who was previously involved with on it. I believe the town had tried using a Colt bus for the Brentwood route several years ago, and there was a lot of complaints that both Southland and Rideco received with respect to the comfort of the seats, tight seating, and limited capacity for more of a longer duration trip outside of the town. It was at that point that Southland decided to revert back to coach buses for the Brentwood route. I already spoke about the spares and the risk that would pose to the operational performance of our existing local transit system. And then with respect to potential grant funding, so we are awaiting results from the federal government on the Rural Transit Solutions Fund grant application. This total amount equates to approximately $5 million in grant funding over 5 years. However, this money has largely been earmarked for the required life cycling of our existing fleet, which is going to be reaching end of service life over the next few years as we start the life cycle. So we're preparing for that, and we're very eager to hear about the results of that grant. And as well, the money from that grant is also going to be dedicated towards improving the infrastructure of our transit stops. We have a lot of transit stops in need of some significant infrastructure upgrades to make them truly accessible and safe. So that's really what that funding is earmarked for. So what would a town-run service look like? And essentially what I'm saying is, what would it look like if the town of Cochrane were to operate a regional intermunicipal transit service? Because that's what we're talking about. It would essentially look like a similar arrangement that we have with Southland today with our local transit system. So we would own the fleet, we would have to procure the fleet, but we would contract that out to an operator. The bus drivers for our local transit system are not town employees. Initially, out of the gate, best case scenario, we could expect that maybe fare revenues could cover the daily operating cost. That means the most basic daily cost, which is essentially the service, the hourly service rate that an operator would charge us to have their employee driving our buses. And it could potentially be profitable during peak seasons. The risks come with the rising diesel costs that we're experiencing today, as well as the major midlife overhauls required for large fleets such as coach buses. But really the big elephant in the room is the capital investment required from the town. So we would expect to need two to three coach buses, 1 per route, and have a spare on hand if required. We're looking at a total estimated cost of could exceed $2 million, 2 to 3 million, with also the requirement to replace every 10 to 12 years to be able to life cycle that fleet out. There's also considerations with how the maintenance is going to be done in-house, so the storage of these coach buses, having the in-house maintenance capabilities to keep them at the appropriate state of repair. So the financial reality is the fares will not cover the asset costs of purchasing these buses. It would require significant capital funding and reserve contributions over time. The town would be required to fully fund the fleet purchase. Again, we're looking at order of magnitude of $2 to $3 million, but also plan for those long-term replacements, overhauls, and the maintenance demands and facilities would also need to be considered. So at a very high level, what kind of actions, if any, are available to the town? So option 1 would be a do-nothing scenario, allowing the private sector to come in and take this on if there is a case. There would be no service until a private operator fills the service gap, but there would be also no operating or capital costs incurred by the town. Option 2 would be similar, however, with slightly more proactive approach. So the town, its transit department, could proactively engage other operators to make sure that they're well aware of this upcoming service gap. I'm sure many are, but just us doing that extra effort and connecting with them, letting them know we're here to support if they need information on ridership, if they need information on how our system works, is there opportunities to better integrate our local transit system with a commuter? Are there opportunities to improve marketing, which could hopefully trigger an increase in ridership? So taking a collaborative approach in reaching out to other private operators, but again, it's still remaining a fully private service. There would be no operating or capital costs to the town other than maybe some staff time and providing some of that information sharing and support. And then option 3 would be taking the service on as a town-run service. So we would run the 2 commuter routes. However, saying that, service would not be provided to the public until at such time we figured out the fleet issue. We have right-sized the fleet. So even in a scenario in which we were committing now to say we're gonna run a town-run regional transit service, it could be over a year before we have coach buses sitting in our yard ready to rock and roll with a new service. Once you factor in the procurement time and then the lead time working with the manufacturer to getting those buses, there's a lot of existing supply chain issues, as you know, for various geopolitical issues, the diesel matter. There's a lot of things going on in the world that has made it very challenging to procure, especially a niche asset like this, being new buses. There's only a couple Canadian manufacturers left in the post-COVID era. And the town costs for option 3 would again be the procurement of the fleet in the range of $2 to $3 million. The daily fares generated would not be covering the asset costs. We would require significant capital funding or reserve contributions over time. So administration's recommendation, it's for town to advance option 2, engage private operators per the direction of council. We would notify potential service providers of upcoming service gap. Private operators would then do their own due diligence on whether to continue this service. But regardless of the outcome, we can expect there will be a lapse in service as of June 1st of this year, and approximately 50 daily commuters will be impacted. I'll now leave it open for questions.
Councillor McDonald.
I'll make the motion for the recommended action. That's my favorite pick anyways. I was curious, remind me how Airdrie handles this.
So Airdrie's a bit of a different animal. About 8 years ago, when Southland approached Airdrie and said, we're discontinuing your on-it service, Airdrie was in a good position. Firstly, they have the larger population, so if you factor in 2 to 3 times of Cochrane, you can expect the numbers work a little bit better and making it financially feasible. But also, they already have a fleet of standard size buses. So I don't know what the capacity of those buses are, but the fleet matter was not an issue for them. So they were able to utilize their existing fleet and get them running.
Okay, so they are handling it in-house as a commuter service, but they had the buses already.
That's correct.
They also had the numbers, I think was pretty significant
Sure.
in terms of the number of customers, frequency that they would be able to run it
Sure.
several times a day versus what.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I have long felt that the commuter service has more potential than what we've seen in terms of users. And so I'd be really curious what the response might be like when you do touch base with other operators. And I do think, although the number of 50 daily commuters impacted, you could argue is a small number. I think we have a ton of residents who travel to Calgary every day, and they need to. So I hate the idea of doing nothing, but I also hate the idea of buying $3 million worth of buses. So I'm in support of the recommended action.
Councillor Fatego.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm in support of this too. But just to be clear, because I already got an email that said that, Cochrane was canceling the service, which we're not canceling the actual service. Southland is canceling the actual service. So it's not us choosing to not go there. But I think Councillor McDonald brought up some points that I've thought for a long time, is that I think as good as the intention of On It was, it missed the mark so many times on just people being able to utilize the service in a grander way than what it was being utilized. But to be clear, I do hope that down the road that we will see a service, especially when it comes to the student population of kids having to get to university or secondary schooling. Even my own daughter actually moved into Calgary because of the fact that she doesn't drive, so she needed to have transportation. So I'm hoping that we can find a solution going forward. But the other point I wanted to make is that I don't really believe that we should be undertaking another transit project on until we actually fix and have a viable municipal running service that is regular, functioning, and before we're throwing more dollars at, trying to expand service, let's get our primary service going and corrected first. So
through you, Mayor, to Councillor Fedeko. So I've been working with our communications department to ensure there's clarity as of tonight moving forward on the messaging as it now becomes public. Our communications department is going to be releasing a press release either tonight or tomorrow, providing more details about this. And we'll also be working with them, whether that's adding notifications to our website, the various transit apps we use, to make sure that as much residents are aware of what's happening and the details regarding those changes. And then to your latter point regarding service improvements to our local transit system in general, I will be coming back to council on May 11th to give you a more lengthy presentation on how we're doing, how the fixed route transit system is operating, what are the planned improvements coming down the pipe this year in 2026 and long term, and how we're going to improve the cost recovery of the transit system moving forward.
And can I have one more thing? Hopefully the community maybe steps up and maybe there's some opportunities to do some ride sharing for the in-between time, that maybe that's something that could be encouraged in the press release, that, hey, if you're driving into an area and if you knew somebody that was using the service, perhaps, if you could decide maybe to work together just as community members to support each other through the time, then maybe everybody gets to the places that they need to go, rather than just leaving people in a lurch if they don't have any support.
Okay. Councillor Gill.
So I too am in favor of option 2. I have a quick question, kind of, again, piggybacking on Councillor Fedeko's comments about a service to Calgary. I'm wondering if there have been feasibility studies done on having a Colt bus go to Crowfoot, for example. I know perhaps there hasn't been, it's not so favorable on Calgary's side of having our buses go there, but I'm curious on if there's been any research into that and your thoughts on that.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Gill. No, I'm not aware of, I've only been with the town for a little less than a year now, but even before my time, I'm not aware of any formal studies looking at regional transit outside of the town. The local transit system improvements that we have implemented recently are essentially the baseline and the foundation that we're working up from. It's certainly on our radar about improving those regional connections, improving paratransit, improving the performance of our on-request transit system. So those are all part of that transit ecosystem that we're looking at. There are conversations advancing outside of the town regarding regional transit and what does that look like from rail. But even now with this news of the service changes here that we're talking about today, I wouldn't be surprised if that triggers some initial discussion between municipalities about what does regional transit look like, or at least in the interim until future rail improvements are introduced. So, what you're saying is something that is certainly on the mind of many commuters. I think it's a matter of time of letting the dust settle on this. It's not a question of whether we will ever have regional bus transit between Calgary and Cochrane. I think it's more the timing. Somebody will come, and we're going to try to smooth that process as much as possible to encourage an operator to come sooner than later.
Okay, thank you for that. I think it would be worth looking into further. When I said feasibility study, just to be clear, I didn't mean an expensive consultant. I just mean an in-house looking at the numbers, and I'm just curious as to whether it could be a possibility, because I think even that would be a step in the right direction long-term, but I definitely agree with getting things in order locally first before we step outside our borders.
Yeah, so through the Mayor to Council, Gail, just to highlight that, you know, part of that initial look at option 3, you could consider that type of feasibility study. And again, it was very small, limited in terms of our kind of what are the numbers of the current users versus the cost of having that type of bus. And that's where we've landed on this recommendation. If our early review had suggested, no, this could pay for itself, this could actually be profitable, we'd probably be coming back to council with a different recommendation or even a suggestion that we would dig deeper. So I would say, you know, based off what you're saying, just with that perspective of like do the numbers make sense? No, and that's where we've kind of landed with this recommendation. As Adam highlighted, I think, you know, in the priority list of things that we're working on, something that we would dig into deeper in the future, but even just an early assessment highlights that financially that there's a challenge there. And I think that's the part that's the challenge when it comes to this cross-regional transit as well, is the idea of, well, who's paying for it? If you think of transit as a service rather than a profitable business, private business, making it accessible to folks, because you could run a commuter, but are people going to pay $50 a day? Probably not. And that's where it gets a little more challenging. But just to give some context there.
Yeah, and I can understand that. I just wonder more of our small buses, how much it would cost to run a Crowfoot kind of thing. But yeah, thanks for that info, and yeah, option 2.
Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll echo my colleagues, and I have 2 questions. One question to follow up. So if a fixed route commuter service is re-established, will administration explore opportunities to integrate it with town cold on-demand or regular routes to broaden the use, such as enabling seniors or other residents to access Calgary for medical appointments or errands, and thereby potentially increase overall ridership and community benefit?
Yes, through you, Mayor, to Councillor Singh. Certainly. So as our local transit system is growing in maturity, and there's a little more consistency in how it's operating, it puts us in a position where we can work more closely with private operators on how can we integrate our services to maximize the efficiency and the accessibility for customers to those services. So I think we're actually in a very good spot right now, and it's just a matter of us communicating that to potential private operators that we're willing to work with them and maximize and leverage what we've built to date to maximize their ridership as well.
The reason I ask, because it used to be like when you have an on-it pass, you are able to use the cold bus pass, and I believe there was some changes made, and that was a disconnect that people were resistant to there, so it would be good to. My follow-up, recognizing this might not be the primary forum for a detailed discussion, I'd like also to ask whether there are plans to continue refining and streamlining the coal service itself, particularly as new neighborhood expand. For example, and I'll just say for example, in areas like Heartland, as new phase develop, some existing stop locations may exceed a reasonable walking distance beyond 400 meters, which can create challenge for residents with strollers, groceries, or mobility consideration, including seniors. Understanding the staff resources are limited, I raise this simply as a consideration for future planning with the goal of ensuring the system evolves alongside community growth in a practical and accessible way.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Singh. So I will be returning to have a more fulsome discussion about this on May 11th, but just to give you a little sample, yes, so the launch of our fixed route system in August, it was a very baseline launch of the system at its most basic level. There was a lot of unknowns about our ability to keep schedules with all the construction at the interchange, the impact of the rail crossings. So we built in a lot of extra time into those schedules to risk manage delays to our buses. Now that the construction has largely subsided and we've been able to avoid the rail crossings to a greater extent than we had initially anticipated, there's a lot of extra bandwidth in our schedules that we can work with. So we're actually planning in August, so that would be the 1-year anniversary of the launch of the fixed routes, to launch a slight update of our existing fixed routes. So these would be expansions to our fixed routes within the same service hours, so this would come at no additional operating costs to the town. So within our existing budget envelope, we'd be able to expand our fixed routes into various other parts of the neighborhoods that are currently underserved, because we have this extra time to work with. So we're looking at the eastern part of Heartland, as you talked about, which is a little bit further distance from the nearest fixed route. The northeast West Hawk area, as that part of the development further advances. Greystone certainly will be able to move through there as a lot of families are moving in. So there's all these opportunities to expand the service, increase the ridership, and improve our cost recovery within our existing budget envelope, and we would like to do that in August during a typical vacation period when we can make these service adjustments. So I'll be happy to present that to you in more detail in a few weeks.
Thank you.
Councillor McDonald.
Councillor Singh's comments just made me think I should mention, in case anyone who's listening or watching doesn't know about it, as we talk about connecting regional transit to localized transit, we do fund the Rocky View Handy Bus. They're a partner of ours. I sit on that board, and so you mentioned seniors who might be trying to get to appointments in the city. Just wanted Cochrane to remember, you've always got that option as well, and it goes door to door. So nobody needs to feel like they can't get somewhere.
That just leaves me. I'll be supporting the motion and recommended action. Share many of the thoughts and opinions that were shared around the bench. I too also think investing in our local transit is a higher priority when it comes to municipal dollars. And also want to flag yet again for the public, anybody who's listening, that this was not a Town of Cochrane decision. I'm sure it will be perceived as such, but it was not. And then I would just also share on more of a aspirational standpoint. I think in the long run, I hope another level of government chooses to support the Calgary Airport to Banff Rail project, which would solve all of our regional transportation needs. And maybe there'd even be an Olympic bid that could sweeten the deal, as Mayor Farkas in Calgary mentioned just last week, something his government's flirting with the idea about. Yeah, so any further conversation? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Me?
All right. Order in the council chambers. That brings us into our notices of motion. We will start with item 8A that was introduced last week, and I'll turn it over to Councillor Patrick Wilson to speak to the motion.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. As outlined last meeting, Cochrane is staring down a $350 million plus non-discretionary infrastructure bill in the medium-term foreseeable future. This infrastructure investment is needed primarily due to current and upcoming residential growth. This is paired with another very conservatively tallied, if I may say so, $350 million discretionary infrastructure list of important social, recreation, community servicing amenities, also driven by growth. I am seeking to equip council with every possible tool to collect from new growth and help make sure that new growth is increasingly funding the community costs it imposes and placing less of these items on the current taxpayer community credit card through debt. I'd like to thank CAO Heineman and administration for working with me to craft this notice of motion. Due to their help, I'm confident that I, and hopefully we as a council, are about to ask for a reasonable workload that can be achieved in the amended timeframe of first meeting September 2026. Happy to have him comment on this. This OSL deep dive is critical to making sure that we have done our due diligence and an important first step to get our financial house in order. Happy to take questions myself as well. And then I'll just read the notice itself. Very quickly, the recommended action, that council direct administration to report back to council by first week, September 2026, with an analysis and recommendations respecting the town's off-site levy framework, including opportunities to accelerate the identification, planning, and inclusion of eligible growth-related infrastructure projects within the off-site levy bylaw.
And for clarification, the motion read this evening was for September, not June, as was previously circulated?
Yes, and in conversation, CAO Heineman was worried about the time frame with such a deep dive motion. Everybody heard the 7 points I read last week, and I emailed them all of council, and they're now in the report here too. And he thought it might be more reasonable to have it back to council by first week of September, and I'm happy to oblige as long as we get it right.
If I can provide a little more context for council on that as well, I think I just wanted to share that we're working to have a meeting with the minister, so that's going to happen potentially at the end of May, right before the June timeline. So certainly that's some important information. Airdrie is just finishing their offsite levy bylaw. It's going to their council tomorrow night, so we're going to see some information there. We have an offsite levy workshop with council on the 27th, so Urban Systems is going to be here as well. And then there are the proposed changes to the MGA. And I think finally the links to capital planning and debt limit, those are a little bit more complex items that we'll just need a little bit more time. So just in speaking with Councillor Wilson, I thought it would be beneficial to just have a little bit more time. I still think we deliver on the objectives within the notice of motion, but I just don't want to rush it for June 15th and not deliver. So appreciate your consideration of that amended timeline.
Okay, Councillor McFadden.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate leaning into the offsite levy bylaws. We don't want to miss any opportunities here in funding tools. And so my question was actually going to be to administration on this, because I know council has been talking about how to improve our offsite levy strategy, certainly since the election. And so I know it was in the works that conversation was going to happen. And so I just wanted to make sure that this would fit within what was doable. So the amended deadline seems to do that, and it fits within what Pat wants. So that was my main question there. The only thing I'd really add to this is I think a strategy we consider is making sure we're having some good conversations with some of our regional municipal partners to make sure that we're all on the same page. I think it would be something to really consider if we could have some of those conversations and make sure maybe that we're all lining up with the same expectations and that we're not necessarily getting gamed, or that different municipalities have different land use bylaw expectations. I think there could be some strength in having a unified voice, especially around the mid-cities in play. So it was kind of a conversation I was having with a municipal colleague in another municipality. So I'd really be interested in maybe if we could sit down some council-to-council chats and see if we could maybe align some of our offsite levy policies. So that's just my addition to your thoughts, but I look forward to this work.
Okay, see no other comments. Oh, okay.
I was just going to make a quick comment that as part of the workshop next week, Urban Systems recently worked with Okotoks on their revised offsite levy. We're following the Airdrie one, so but I appreciate that. I think it would be very important, and Councillor McFadden, I heard you, that councillors are having conversations with their colleagues at other jurisdictions as well to have that sort of unified and common approach. Again, each municipality is different because of the different infrastructure needs, but we really want to, part of the conversation about the workshop next week is doing the level setting, bringing everybody up to the same level in terms of offsite levy, looking at some different opportunities for best practices in the region, and then really setting a stage of some of the additional work that we'll deliver for you on in September. And I would suggest September 8th is the first date in September. So rather than just saying the first week of September, which I had provided to Councillor Wilson, I did look up the date. It is the 8th.
Okay, and before I turn it over to Councillor Fedeko, if I could directly reply to Councillor McFadden's comment about regional collaboration, I would share that through the Mid-Sized Mayors Caucus, as well as Spring AB Munis meeting, it's all of the mid-sized communities are very actively interested in this topic, and the ones who aren't interested in it just haven't figured out why they need to be interested in it, because it's a mouthful to get your and a lot to get your head around. But the impetus that we can rally regional support behind, we are moving a motion at AB Munis in the fall, and there's an opportunity there to take that motion, reach out to our regional partners, and say, hey, can you guys support this motion? Maybe even speak to it at the convention. So there are clear paths forwards for regional collaboration. But sorry, I will turn it back over to Councillor Fedeko.
Just a question. So is administration going to be looking for these opportunities, or are we really going to be leaning on urban systems to bring back what opportunities they feel that we could accelerate some of these items?
They're a strategic partner for us, so I think it would be a combination of both our connection with municipalities as well as working with urban systems as a partner.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Singh.
I think this question would be, I believe, for council as a whole. How can we clearly show residents how these projects, like, as Councillor Wilson mentioned about $350 or $1 million, how these projects are funded over time, including the share support by growth versus taxpayers? Or even like publishing a clear infrastructure roadmap that outlines current and future projects, including timeline, cost, and funding sources. So wasn't sure where to direct this question. So
I might recommend if you could go back and watch the fall council meeting right before the election, 2025. And Mr. Hyman or Mr. Blanchette, did you have further comments?
Just that's actually a midterm goal of ours, is actually to generate a specific report around our offsite levies and linking them to those infrastructure projects. So that's part of the work that we're going to be doing over the next year, is to how we can clearly delineate that and share that with council, but also share that with our community.
Anything else?
So it'll be coming back to us.
So I'm hearing it'll be coming back from administration, and like I said, if there was a discussion in the fall, you could also check out those recorded.
Yeah, to the mayor too, Councillor Singh, that's accurate. That's what our intention is.
Thank you.
Okay, and I'll provide comment. Councillor Wilson, very supportive of this. I'm glad you've brought it forward. When you hear the words offsite levy, it kind of goes over a lot of people's heads, like what the heck that even is, but it's incredibly important. And I saw some of the initial first impressions in the community's response to this, getting a little bit of media coverage, is not a lot of people in the community understand the importance of it, but essentially, like, we have all this infrastructure and all these facilities and services to pay for because of growth that has already been approved, and this is the mechanism by which we make sure growth is paying its fair share. And it's super duper important, so thanks for bringing it forwards, and happy to be supporting it this evening. Councillor Wilson, did you have closing remarks to provide on your notice?
Not necessarily on the notice, but just while we're on the topic, because of what Councillor Singh just asked, I thought it useful to take a moment to also say that even with what the MGA provides us to be able to charge through offsite levies, there's all kinds of holes of things that we can't collect for that's a directly responsible because of growth. There are things we have to fund because of growth, and I thought, Mayor, you did a great job at the AV Munis asking the Premier herself as an example. I thought it was a perfect example. Why can we not charge for a new operations facility yard, which is clearly connected to community growth, and we can't even charge for that within the current MGA parameters? So I think it's really smart that we're going to a future conference with the new initiative, saying how do we expand the scope of these things that we clearly need to charge growth to pay for growth, and the MGA doesn't allow us to do it yet. So this is just an initial first step to explore everything we can currently do within the bounds of the MGA, and then our next job is to advocate for expansion, because it's not enough to help us pay for our liabilities.
Okay.
Mouthful and a future problem, but this is a start. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
Anything else? I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. That brings us to our last item. Deputy Mayor Gale, I should have given you more notice about this, but I am procedurally not able to chair my own notice of motion, which means I need to turn it over to yourself. Do I need a motion to turn the chair over to the Deputy Mayor, or is that just something I do verbally? Okay, so you just do exactly what I always do, say, decide whoever's got the flashing green light goes next, and as long as it's red, they're turned on. And yeah, you can just, just wing it.
Okay. I'm going to introduce Mayor Nagel to present his motion on a balanced growth strategy.
Okay, so I read the executive summary when I last gave notice of it. I'll just make the motion and then provide some additional comments. The motion is that Council directs administration to report back with options to establish a high-level strategic objective within the town's strategic plan that affirms a commitment to balanced growth, including consideration of a target growth rate a review of growth management frameworks used by comparable municipalities in alignment with financial capacity, infrastructure, housing, economic development, and environmental incomes, as well as an evaluation of a balanced growth target, including analysis of a 3% annual growth scenario, high-level implementation tools, and policy mechanisms to support achieving that growth target, and a proposed roadmap outlining analysis, engagement, and timing for the development and implementation of a balanced growth strategy. That is the motion. I have not attached a timeline to this, recognizing that it is a very large body of work. This is also, it's very tightly tied to the issue that Councillor Wilson just brought up, which is paying for all of our growth. And so I've got some written comments I just want to run through here, just because I didn't want to miss anything. So we have a lot of growth coming to Cochrane that's already been approved. We were just told last week that if this council doesn't approve a single new home, we still have up to 20 years of residential growth that is going to occur, with up to 11,000 more units having already received land use and or subdivision approval. And while Cochrane's spirit has always been one of small town charm, the reality is that the die has already been cast, and Cochrane is no longer a small town, but I would suggest we are now a big town by Canadian standards. And all of the approvals that are already in place have us on track to not just be a small town forever, but a small city one day. And that has already been set in motion. With that growth, there is going to come a lot of challenges as well as opportunities. The new residents moving to Cochrane are going to require an enormous amount of infrastructure and facilities to be built by our municipal government. And I sincerely believe it's time for our organization to level up the way we plan for growth, and we get more sophisticated in the way we plan for and accommodate that population growth. As long as the municipal government is expected to bear the full responsibility of providing all the essential services and infrastructure that new residents require, we simply cannot afford to let the free market build as many homes as it likes, as fast as it likes. Currently, there is an imperfect relationship between those market residential growth forces and the infrastructure we are required to build. And that is something that I hope our group endeavors to fix. And I believe the motion of Councillor Wilson's that was just approved is tightly related to this. I also want to clarify that this motion this evening is just intended to be the start of the discussion. So to be super clear, this motion before us this evening is not going to immediately implement any specific policy decisions or actions. Instead, it is to begin the conversation and bring more information and options back to council for proper deliberation, feedback, and consideration. This is just to get the conversation started this evening, and I am hoping to get a supportive vote from council to indicate that we as a group are seriously interested in collectively pursuing this important policy conversation. I believe this conversation was one of the leading, if not the leading conversation in the municipal election. I certainly feel it was something that I was elected to advance in the council chambers by the residents who put me in this seat. And I also wanted to share that just in the past week, we've received some regional interest in this conversation. I did have an interview with the Calgary Herald last week that actually got a lot of coverage. Some of my friends in the city mentioned to me that they've read it. And then I did also receive, I saw the comments in the Calgary Herald were actually quite supportive. And there was a number of people saying, yeah, I'm glad to hear Cochrane's talking about this. I think other municipalities should be saying the same thing. And I did also, by chance, get the opportunity to speak directly with the Minister of Municipal Affairs a bit about this last week. The conversation was brief, and I do not intend to put any words in his mouth, but the minister did indicate that he felt municipal governments taking steps to grow smartly as opposed to just growing unwieldily. He thought that that was a reasonable path forwards, and I did clarify with the Calgary Herald as well as the minister that my intent is not to slam the door on growth in Cochrane, but to pursue thoughtfully towards growth. And furthermore, I also want to clarify for anybody who's a home builder or in the housing industry that the focus is not to try to claw back previously granted approvals, as those are something that have already been promised to those businesses and those landowners. Instead, this is about taking a thoughtful approach moving forward. Something that I shared with the public during the election, and I'll reiterate again, is that this is not just about the stuff that's already been approved. It's about everything that is going to continue to be approved. Since the week I first became mayor, literally since the week I first became mayor, I have had landowners and developers approaching myself, trying to get in front of council, trying to get expedited through our administrative processes, because there is a huge groundswell of people who want to build in Cochrane and sell homes in Cochrane, and the pressure is there. And so this motion is about how are we going to work within that pressure. So that is my preamble, and I would open any Conversation, questions, criticisms, supportive comments?
Do I just, Councillor Fideko?
Oh, that's right.
Do I
Yeah.
just, yeah, I have to chair it.
I'm in support of this, and I'm glad that you said that it's the beginning of the conversation, because I think that all of us around this table, well, it might not just be about the percentage number. It's about, for me, it's about finding other options. I think we all have certain parts of development and growth that have occurred that we would like to have a further conversation about, whether that's subsequential development, whether or not it's housing styles, whether or not it's that we're actually, building to what residents expect and should expect, the quality, and while keeping and maintaining what people love about Cochrane. So I'm glad that this is not just something that is kind of tossed in, but beginning a conversation. And ultimately, the goal, I'm sure, will be to have policy to back up what we're actually talking about, and that's where we'll be able to maybe have a little bit more control as we go on. And I like the idea of thoughtful growth. It's just not open-ended growth.
Can I reply?
Mayor Nagel?
Just to reply to Councillor Fideko's comments, yes, I have heard through formal conversations as well as informal conversation that there's a lot of interest from every member of council to approach growth in a variety of different ways, and the hope is to build a collaborative agenda that represents all of our constituents and all of our interests, and is something that we are all proud to put our stamp of approval on by the end.
You done?
I'm done.
Okay. Councillor McFadden?
Yeah, since one of the options on the table was to provide encouraging words, I'm here to do that. And you're exactly right. I think the main theme of the last election was really about growth management and how we do that. I think everybody realizes and understands that growth is happening, but there's a higher expectation that we need to manage our growth more smartly. And so I'm really glad we're going to be deliberate in having this conversation about what that means. And so I know you brought up, a 3% annual growth target. I assume that meant a 3% annual population growth target. And so just based on, and I really appreciated last week's presentation, just based on so that 3% based on the amount of subdivided land, if we do 3% of currently what is approved, just the subdivided stuff, that's like 14,000 people in a decade, which seems like an appropriate number of people to manage, but just to get those numbers. And and I appreciate Councillor Fideko backing me up on this sequential development language. And what I mean by that, and the mayor has acknowledged that this would be part of the conversation as well. Right now we have 11 neighborhoods under growth at various different stages. None of them are finished. And so what my concern is in doing that, all the growth all at once everywhere, is we can't focus our own resources on, like if we were just on the south, we could just be, we only need a fire hall in the south, and we only need to put recreation in the south. Like if we'd focused it better, we could also focus our resources better. And so also I think the planning team and all of our growth management team, 11 communities at a time is a lot to manage for staff. And so if we were just doing one community at a time. So now the horse is well out of the barn on that, but how we move ahead on the next options I think is really important. And just take some key learnings where we've been in the last decade. Because I'm still very, very proud of Cochrane. We have like one of the most desirable places to live in the country. So nothing we've done is terrible, but we can certainly learn and take it to the next level. So I really appreciate this conversation. I also want to, communicate, as we come up with a plan and be able to communicate to the developers what our strategy is so that they come to meet our bar and not just try to knock on your door. And so, I'm really glad we're having this conversation. I've really appreciated the collaborative nature around the table as everybody's kind of shared their opinion of what it means to manage our growth or to grow smartly, those type of conversations. So, so this was just meaningful applause to your great idea. Thank you so much.
Councillor Singh?
Thank you. So are we okay to ask questions or, yeah. Thank you, Mayor. And I wanted to start it by acknowledging what we have consistently heard from the resident that Cochrane is growing too quickly and there's a strong desire for a more balanced approach. Residents want confidence that growth is matched with infrastructure, capacity, service delivery, and financial sustainability. But also wanted to make sure that it's not about stopping growth. It's about managing it more responsibly and ensuring we are working with developers and stakeholders in a way that supports sustainable delivery. So my question would be like, how would a moderated growth target impact offsite levy funding, particularly in terms of timing and potential gap in financing infrastructure projects already planned in the capital program?
The question is, how is it already being incorporated?
Like, would it affect any things like which we have already planned, or like with the offsite levy funding?
So I would like to respond, and then if administration wants to, sorry, through the chair, can I respond?
Mayor Nagel?
Apologies. Through the chair. We are embarking upon the work of sorting out our 10-year capital strategy and all of the infrastructure and facilities we need to build. And that's something we've fallen behind on. But when we craft that strategy, I would suggest that the first thing we need to resolve is just how fast are we going to grow? Because if we grow 3% per year compounded annually, by 10 years out, that's one scenario. But if we grew at 6% compounded annually, 10 years out, it is a vastly different scenario, which means that this target growth rate that I hope we are able to set and pursue can inform every single one of our financial planning documents. Of course, the target's only going to be as good as the tools that we have to enforce it and move towards it. But in my experience over my 12 years on council, there has only ever been an assumed growth rate, and we just kind of threw 4% out there all the time, but there was never ever any tangible or meaningful steps taken to actually pursue that growth target. And we have varied wildly over the years around that 4% number, and it's never really been very consistent. So the hope is to establish a growth target, come up with policy tools to actually bring our approvals in line with that growth target, and then use that number to inform all of our financial plans and our staffing and operational plans that we need to pass. Does that answer the question, and did administration care to weigh in?
Mr. Mayor, I thought you did a very good job of answering that question. Councillor, or through the chair to Councillor Singh, all I would say is that all these different elements are inherently linked. So when we're talking about growth and growth targets, we're going to have to think about infrastructure planning. We're also going to need to think about financial capacity is probably one of the biggest things. And then the financial capacity is obviously linked to offsite levies and how many offsite levies we're collecting at that time. So there is going to be a lot of work that we're going to have to put in this to answer those questions. But you bring up a good point, because if you were to go, I appreciate to no growth, then there's significant impact when you start to think you're not collecting levies and you already have financial obligations. So there is an impact. What exactly that looks like, we'll work and have some more information for council's consideration.
I have a follow-up for the administration. So would it be possible to have a high-level scenario analysis on what does that mean for municipal revenues, capital funding capacity, and potential impacts on the tax base, so the council and public can better understand the trade-off?
Yes, I think that's something that was previously through Councillor Wilson's notice of motion. I think having an understanding of what offsite levies mean as an average citizen in Cochrane is really important. And that's only one financial tool. What are some of the other tools that we could explore? And speaking with Urban today, that's part of our workshop next week. So we'll be talking about it next Monday night.
Sure, thank you. And on the positive side, Mayor, in closing, I'll support this motion. That support is based on what we have heard during the election and continue to be reinforced through ongoing conversation with residents about infrastructure pressures and the need for a more sustainable approach to growth.
Councillor McDonald?
Thank you. What I've observed from this group of councillors, I think I can say confidently, is that we all want Cochrane's next years to feel intentional, and that we're not just responding to external pressure in such an attractive region. And I want to further to that add to Councillor Fedeco's list of what thoughtful growth means to each of us is housing quality for sure, sequential development for sure, but also that diverse housing piece that we keep talking about. It came up tonight, where we're building for our seniors, and we're building for different income levels, and we're building estate homes, and that all is included in that continuum of diverse housing for me. And then what I like to call that is building for people, not population. So I think within your motion tonight, Mayor, that for me, this all lives inside of that. I have two questions for you. You mentioned in the write-up that other municipalities are advancing similar strategies. Can you talk about any of those municipalities? Do you have any examples you're a big fan of? And then my second question is, how do we ensure that the messaging here is nuanced enough that we're still attracting business investment?
Question one, I have seen screenshots of PowerPoint presentations of the City of Calgary using the words balanced growth as one example, but through my conversations with other mayors, through the regional organizations that I'm part of, mid-sized mayors, as well as going to the AB Munis conference, and then just meeting for lunch with some of the mayors, our problem of the infrastructure gap that we're running into that is being driven by the growth in Alberta's population is by no means unique. Every single municipal government is out there looking at the amount of stuff that they need to pay for, and then they're seeing rising capital costs by a large amount. The inflation in government capital projects is very, very pronounced. They're looking at increased cost of borrowing. We're used to borrow at 1% to 2%. It's now significantly higher. And then we are all seeing reduced funding support from the Alberta government at the same time. And every single municipal leader that I have talked to that has looked at the situation is scratching their heads thinking, how the heck are we going to pay for this without increasing taxes? Really, really, really increasing taxes. And so I don't think we're by any means alone in this challenge. And then I actually think this is an opportunity for us to lead a little bit. Something I told to the Calgary Herald is the growth that we're experiencing in Alberta and Cochrane is really in a lot of ways unprecedented in modern political times. And unprecedented political challenges often, I believe, require unprecedented policy measures. And I think we can come up with some creative solutions. And I'm not going to get specific tonight because that's not the intent of tonight's conversation, but I am confident we can come up with some creative solutions that we work with other municipal governments where they actually they agree with what we want to do and they would look at practicing it themselves as well. And I would also say that there was a more tangible, specific scenario in Calgary. They had, I talked about this so much during the election. There was growth management overlay, I think they called it in Calgary. That is a policy tool to look at, or something that there is a bit of a precedent for it already. But I would have to confirm that that's actually the title of it. But they did have a tool in Calgary where there would be some learnings. My understanding is it was imperfect, and they ended up removing it and replaced it with the oh so popular blanket rezoning. So yeah, that was question one. Question two, please remind me what your second question was.
Business investment.
Business investment. So firstly, I don't think that this motion would detract from business investment in that I don't think that our council meetings are so powerful, like we put a few Facebook posts out there or a couple of Cochrane Now and Cochrane Eagle articles, come on, and then shut down all the business investment. However, there is work to be done in continuing to bring business into the community. Specifically, we're advancing our economic development strategy. And then what I hope to do as a group and working with our administration, once we're done the economic development strategy, actually identifying key stakeholders and going out and showing them our economic development strategy, showing them our economic corridors and some of our underdeveloped lands, and encouraging them to bring investment into our community. And so it's kind of a dual-pronged approach, and the way I hope we look at growth is we look at the residential development and say, we're going to keep on working with it, but we've got to kind of slow it down a little bit. And then we need to go out and, as a second area of study, figure out how to create economic incentives to bring more business to Cochrane. And that work will come next, but it's separate from this motion. Okay. Are those adequate answers to your questions?
Yep, I wanted to give you the opportunity to clarify that we're not painting kind of growth with one brush, and that it is a complex conversation, and not one sentiment applies to kind of every factor of what growth might mean to some people. Yeah, and I agree with all of that, and I'm pretty excited to see how this all shakes out. I think there's some kind of fun tension in it, to be honest, because I'm excited to hear about how the OSL breakdown and the scenarios that Councillor Singh just asked for, because OSLs obviously will collect more revenue with more development versus slowing down development. So I'm really curious to see how this all comes together and the plan that starts to take shape.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you. I'm imagining a critic sitting at home that may argue with this motion something to the line of, you don't control growth rates, market forces do, or perhaps have some humility. You aren't wise enough to micromanage and centrally plan, a community's growth rate, and you should leave those individual decisions to potential home buyers. And I would have some sympathy with that sort of a sentiment, but also at the same time, I agree that you, Mr. Mayor, and then this council has a mandate basically to do something about the growth that's been going on in Cochrane. And I agree with the sentiment here, and especially the language that you said, high-level strategic objective. And I'm interested to see what administration can come back with such a large task, and what that could actually mean for policy-wise. How would you control control growth to a 3% growth rate? I don't know that answer. Perhaps you just hit on a few things like the growth overlay in Calgary or some community practice that I'm not aware of, but I'm interested to hear where this can go, what we can do with it, and I support the way it's worded tonight to investigate a problem that's really real and we're all talking about. I agree with the sentiment that growth should benefit current residents, so let's see where this goes. I support it.
Can I respond?
Mayor Nagel?
I think the free market argument on development would have a lot more strength if the free market was providing all of the infrastructure and facilities that this growth requires, which is what I recognize your motion is trying to capture. And so we have free market forces, developers coming out wanting to build homes on land, but then they turn to the municipal government. They want us to build their roads. They want us to build their services. They want the provincial level to build the schools. They want them to build the healthcare. And so the free market is only capturing the house, which means the public sector is doing all the rest. And so we cannot then rely and say, well, the free market should just figure it out. Because if the free market figures it out, there won't be any infrastructure to pay for all of these houses. So on that, I actually spoke to that in my motion. I said that as long as it is our responsibility to provide the services for these residents, then we cannot allow the free market to make all of the decisions, because we are actively involved in providing the services here. So we do have, I think, an economic argument for why we should be doing this. Secondly, if anybody says that we should get off our high chairs and say that we are not in a position to centrally plan the growth rate, I would argue that the municipal election, as you indicated, did give us a clear mandate. I felt that it was very clearly discussed by myself, as well as most of, if not all of you guys in the municipal election. It was talked to what we would do to manage growth. Residents overwhelmingly were supportive of a municipal government that was ready to take action to better manage growth, I felt, and I thought the election results covered that. And then there was a third piece in your comments. There was the free market piece, the centrally planning piece.
And perhaps shouldn't individual home buyers be left to make their own individual decisions? But I think you probably hit on the fact that we're not charging for it.
Sorry, there was the piece of how we might do this. Yeah. I do have ideas. I'm not just throwing darts in the dark. But again, we're not wanting to get into specifics this evening. Tonight's motion would just be to get an indication from council that we want to move forward with this body of work. It's going to be a multi-month, multi-year endeavor, and then we can get into the specifics after. But I do have some more ideas to bring forward.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you. Great answers.
Thanks.
Okay, so if that's all, I just have a few quick words. I'm really excited to see this come forward, and I also agree this is something I heard more times than not when I knocked on doors in the fall, and I agree that this is a clear mandate. So I'm really excited to see this come together, and as well as how it ties in with the OSL motion put forward by Councillor Wilson, as well as potentially our economic development strategy, and see how that all fits together long term. So I think that's it for me, and I call it to question. Yeah? All in favor? Unanimous vote.
Great, thank you. Now, do I just resume the chair? Does there need to be some sort of formal action to do so? I am resuming the chair. It has been done. That brings us into Mayor's report. Thank you for that. In case you haven't heard me talk enough yet this evening. We had a very busy week last week up here at the Ranch House, and I'm happy to provide an update on some of the highlights. Of course, the big announcement of the week last week was the addition of a new full-time ambulance being added onto Cochrane's EMS rotation. That takes us from 2 to 3, which is a 50% increase in our ambulance coverage. It still kind of blows my mind because 3 feels pretty light for 40,000 people who could all walk into an emergency at any moment. But there is regional coverage beyond that, should the 3 not be good enough. But again, I want to thank our local healthcare advocates who have done a tremendous job advocating for our community's healthcare needs through the Cochrane EMS Crisis Citizen Action Club. Also, our CAO and I had a very good meeting with Rocky View School Division to talk about how we can help get more school sites ready for their future education needs. We'll likely be organizing something with the school division and all of council in the months ahead to bring the group up to speed on the whole conversation. There was also a bit of an unexpected service interruption with the Cochrane Food Bank last week, and as soon as we heard about it up here at the Ranch House, we scrambled to help sort out the problem. My understanding is that the food bank now has a solution in place to continue providing food to families in need. Thank you to all of our staff, as well as all the community volunteers to step up to sort out that little wrinkle. I also met with Helping Hands, and we had a discussion about their desire for a dedicated community space, which I promised I would share with all of you, and I'm doing that right now. They have a vision and a desire for a permanent location that Helping Hands could operate out of to act as a community hub to connect Cochrane residents with many groups and services. So there is no space being discussed currently. It is a desire for a space, to clarify. So everybody perk up. Just to be clear, it's a desire. And something that I hope we can help them with in the years ahead. And on top of all that, we also had our annual staff appreciation dinner on Saturday. Thank you to everyone who was able to make it. We had a record turnout with close to 200 people choosing to attend this year. It was a lot of fun and a great opportunity to not only recognize our hardworking administration members, but also to get to know more people in a personal setting. That was fantastic. Thank you to the organizers. And last but not least, as was already alluded to this evening, we are working to get in front of the Minister of Municipal Affairs to talk about Cochrane's financial plans and challenges in the weeks ahead. And those are all my highlights. Any other questions, concerns? Can I get a motion to accept the Mayor's report? Councillor McFadden?
So moved.
Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Passed. And Council reports. I believe Councillor Singh has one.
So, here. I think over the past week, I had the opportunity to connect with residents, colleagues, and community partners. On April 17th, I had the pleasure of attending Riverview Association meeting, Meet Your Neighbors Night. On April 18th, we had joined with my council colleague at the Town Cochrane Staff Appreciation event at SLS. And also congratulations on the third full ambulance, Mayor had a. And congratulations to Cochrane EMS Citizen Crisis Action Club. And also to our MLA, provincial government as well, MLA Matt Jones, a Minister of Hospital and Surgical Services for his thing. Looking ahead, on April 21st, I'm attending Age-Friendly Steering Committee meeting. April 25th, Town is hosting community cleanup from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And thank you to all the people who are participating. April 25th, Cochrane Food Bank will be holding a food drive. I'll be leading a team in Heartland alongside with dedicated volunteers. April 26th, Cabeza Grande in Heartland will celebrate its 5th anniversary with special offering throughout the day. I encourage everyone to stop by and support this valued local business. I want to touch base on this. As we approach 6-month mark of our council term, I want to take a moment to reflect and express my gratitude. It feels like just yesterday we were taking our oath of the office, moving through orientation, participating in AB Munis, and working through budget deliberation. Since then, we have made meaningful progress, including the appointment of our new CAO, provincial approval of funding for 2 schools, one for construction and one for design, support of a new local location for a Francophone high school in South Bow Landing, advancement of provincial funding for design and engineering of a new bridge over Bow River, planning for future fire service capacity in River Heights through the purchase of Tune Base. These accomplishments reflect strong collaboration between all levels of government, our partners, and our shared commitment to advocating for our community. I would also like to recognize the outstanding work of our administration, who continue to do an excellent job navigating an evolving landscape with professionalism, adaptability, and clear commitment to serving our community. While there is still much work ahead, we are building a strong foundation as we move into our strategic planning and prepare for upcoming trade show on May 2nd and 3rd. I would also like to acknowledge contribution of my fellow council members, Councillor Gale on expense claim improvement, Councillor Wilson on OSL Levy optimization, Councillor McFadden on civil leadership, Councillor McDonald on accessibility and inclusion advocacy, Councillor Fedeko on upcoming whistleblower initiative, and Mayor Nagel on balanced growth strategy. I'm also proud of the progress made through my own seniors engagement follow-up work. In particular, I want to recognize Mayor Nagel for your leadership in fostering an environment where councillors are encouraged to take initiative in areas they are passionate about. And that go to the civil leadership, and Councillor McFadden bring that in. This collaborative approach strengthens both our decision-making and our service to the community. We are strongest when we work together. And I believe this is what our residents expect and deserve. And finally, thank you to the residents and businesses of our town for your trust you have placed in us. We remain committed to continuous improvement and to maintaining clear, consistent communication as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Can I get a motion, or sorry, another report? Councillor Fedeko.
That's hard to beat. I actually just wanted to wish the general public a happy National Volunteer Week. It is National Volunteer Week, and whether or not you volunteer once a year for an hour or you volunteer on one of our event committees, whatever you do, thank you. You make Cochrane a better place. So just wanted to thank everybody out there for their free, hard work that they do all year round.
Okay, thanks. Any other reports? Can I get a motion to accept the reports? Councillor McDonald makes that motion. All in favor? Carried. And before I adjourn the council meeting, I have to say, go Oilers, go. All right, that's it.